You practice immortality. I cultivate the land. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51. Gyroting. Xuan lowered his head quickly, not looking at the black kite. The evil thought that passed through his body quickly disappeared. What a ghost thing. He cursed secretly in his heart and became more cautious about the forces behind the black market. It is conceivable that the forces behind them are so terrifying that they can arrange more than 10 strange kites to patrol the black market. He walked slowly while paying careful attention to his surroundings. There are more cultivators entering the black market than I thought. 200 people, each of them pays an entrance fee of 3 spirit stones, which means at least 600 spirit stones. This is too much money. The spiritual energy in this black market is richer than the periphery of the market. I don't know how long 3 spirit stones can stay. If there is no time limit, then I might as well stay in the black market to practice and get some spiritual energy. He thought to himself, but he didn't think of trying it. After all, he didn't know what the consequences would be. The purpose of the forces behind the black market is to make money from spirit stones, but there is no reason to let the cultivators get money from them. The management of the entire black market is relatively loose. The cultivators who come in can set up stalls at will, as long as they don't invade other people's stalls or cause other conflicts. The managers in the black market will not intervene. Xuan carefully searched the things on the stalls. The main purpose of his coming in this time was to find rare or unknown spiritual seeds, seedlings, or young monsters, monster eggs, etc. Secondly, see if you can find a formation with strong protection. The defensive formation in the yard was left by the original tooth shop. He only has the right to use it for a period of time. Moreover, as the number of spiritual plants in the spiritual field increases and the grade becomes higher and higher, the current formation seems to be a bit stretched. Secondly, see if there is a suitable practice for you. There has been no practice in the light group reward of mature spiritual plants. Although the time for cultivation is not long, if you can find a profound practice, Xuan thinks you can try to get it. Then there are defensive magic weapons. Whether it is a silver breaking blade or the fire sword, or the thunder and fire beads, they are all offensive. Xuan feels that he needs to make up for his shortcomings. However, with the white light ball as a base and 4 red cloud pine nuts about to mature, he did not urgently need magic tools. The first thing to sell was the first grade flying sword left by Kinming. It had been in the storage bag for a long time, and it was on the black market, so Xuan had nothing to worry about. If the price of red cloud pine nuts was right, he could also consider selling it. There was also the second grade Lihuo sword, which had a certain conflict with the function of the silver blade. Although the latter was only first grade, it could achieve unexpected results because it could split many fragments, so Xuan used it more easily. The goods on the stalls were all kinds of strange. Xuan even saw several gloomy paper figures on one stall. The pale paper body had 2 bright red blushes on the cheeks and a weird smile on the corners of the mouth. The stall owner was also weird, with a thin figure, not much thicker than a piece of paper, and a frail look. He wore a loose red and green robe, and looked gloomy and scary at first glance. There were also many strange materials on the stalls, monsters, parts of evil spirits, and some things of unknown origin. Huge pupils that can crawl on their own, strange monsters with twins in one body, with countless slender tentacles, and hair balls that fluttered in the wind like seaweed. Xuan couldn't help but pause when passing a stall. On the stall, there were several beautiful female cultivators, with the first and second levels of key training. Each female cultivator was tightly tied with black ropes, making her body parts more prominent, which made people feel violent and wanted to ravage her. There was a black cardboard in front of the female cultivator, which read, "Selling furnaces and cauldrons at a low price, low-level key training. Daoyao, do you want to try it out for quality?" Behind the stall, a thin monk with a masked face said to Xuan in a rough voice, "No, I need to ensure that my yin yang is not lost before I build my foundation for practicing the technique." Lu Xuan made up an excuse and walked past the stall. He frowned slightly, his mind was full of thoughts. As far as he could remember, before Wang Shan was invaded and polluted by the evil spirit, he had bought a female cultivator of the second level of key training in the black market, and he showed off to Lu Xuan at that time. After buying her, Wang Shan's cultivation level rose rapidly. Thinking about it now, Lu Xuan realized that something was wrong. How could he improve his cultivation level quickly? By having fun with others. There was no such good thing in the world. Perhaps, the invasion of the evil spirit was closely related to the female cultivator of the second level of key training. Thinking of this, Lu Xuan couldn't help but speed up his pace. He came to a stall. The stall owner was a female cultivator. From the aura on her body, it could be judged that her cultivation level was not weak. At least she was a cultivator of the middle level of key training, and it was very likely that she was a cultivator of the higher level of key training. The stall in front of her was mostly filled with spiritual medicines and spiritual plants, the lowest of which were first grade spiritual plants. Many of them Lu Xuan had never seen before. Lu Xuan pretended to choose from the stalls, and finally picked up a vine about half a foot long. The vine was dark black, twisted and tangled, like a winding black snake. Fellow Daoist, where did this vine come from? Can you tell me? He asked the female cultivator. This is Jiao vine, a third grade spiritual plant. It can be used to refine whip-shaped or rope-shaped magical instruments. It can also be added to certain elixir materials, after being ground into powder. The female cultivator replied indifferently. I remember that vine-type spiritual plants can be cultivated by cuttings, so can this vine be cultivated? Lu Xuan asked curiously. In theory, it can, but I advise you not to be wishful thinking. Even the spiritual plant masters in the big sects cannot easily cultivate it. Only those Jiao vines that have been specially treated, coupled with unique cultivation methods, can a Jiao vine be cultivated into a complete vine. Really? Then I'm indeed a little fanciful. Lu Xuan sighed, his expression unable to hide his disappointment. I'm somewhat interested in this piece of Jiao vine. I plan to go back and refine it into a rope-shaped magic weapon. Daoist friend, please name a price. It is a third grade spiritual plant, in good condition, but a little short. If Daoist friend really wants it, you can take it for 200 spiritual stones. Although the female cultivator saw Lu Xuan's cultivation at a glance, she did not show any contempt. After all, in the black market, cultivation is the most insignificant thing. 200 spiritual stones, that's too expensive. Lu Xuan shook his head hurriedly. He only had more than 200 spiritual stones in total, so it was naturally difficult to make a decision at once. He hesitated for a moment, looked around, and saw that no one was paying attention to this side, so he took out the second grade Lihuo sword from his storage bag. Daoist friend, what do you think of this second grade flying sword? Can it be exchanged for this piece of Jiao vine? The female cultivator took the flying sword from Lu Xuan's hand, injected a trace of spiritual power, and flames flew out of the fiery red sword. The flying sword is good. How about this? You add another 30 spirit stones, and take the dragon vine away. Fellow Daoist, you only have a short piece of the dragon vine. It is too limited to refine a magic weapon, and it is a bit useless to refine pills. Besides, the material is one of the cheaper ones among all things. My flying sword is enough to exchange for it. 20 spirit stones. It's still too expensive. 10 spirit stones. I'll take it immediately. The female cultivator hesitated. The value of this piece of dragon vine is indeed greatly affected by its shortness, and she has kept it for a long time. As for Lu Xuan's second grade flying sword, she liked it very much, so she nodded directly. Okay. Chapter 52 Bloodbath. After using the second grade Lihuo sword to exchange for a third grade Jiao vine from the female cultivator, Lu Xuan continued to wander around the black market. After searching for a while, he did not find any similar unknown spirit seeds, so he found an empty space and hung the first grade flying sword he got from Kinming. In the end, he successfully sold it for 35 spirit stones. He did not find a particularly satisfactory protective formation in the black market, and the grades of the few skills he saw were not very high, so Lu Xuan had to give up. After comparing and weighing, he spent 32 spirit stones to buy a first grade shield. The shield was called the Iron Scale Shield, and it had dense black scales on the outside. The protective power was pretty good among the first grade magic tools. The most numerous items in the black market were strange materials of monsters and mature spirit plants, followed by talismans and elixirs. Xuan was not very interested in these, so he used his spiritual power to activate the guide talisman, followed the guidance of the black arrow, and walked out of the thick black fog that seemed to be substantial. As soon as he came out, the cultivator guarding the entrance and exit took back the guide talisman. Xuan remained alert, looked around, and quickly left the periphery of the black market. Along the way, no accidents happened. No one in the black market targeted him, a Yankee training cultivator whose cultivation and wealth looked extremely ordinary. More than half an hour later, he returned to the outside of the yard. The formation was still functioning well, without any signs of being touched or invaded. Xuan was slightly relieved, because at this moment, there were many rare spiritual plants in the spiritual field behind the yard. First grade blood jade ginseng, pure snow lotus, red cloud pine, second grade sword grass, dark marrow ganoderma, king Mio spiritual tea, third grade Xuan iron aluo fruit. Even if you don't count the light ball rewards they bring when they mature, the value alone is enough for any key training cultivator to take risks. When Xuan opened the gate, he saw a black light flash past his eyes and rushed to the back of the yard. He was startled at first, and then he saw the black light figure clearly in an instant. It was the green-eyed cloud stepping lynx that he had cruelly left at home. This little guy, has he been waiting outside the door for me to come back? Xuan went around the yard. The young cloud stepping lynx was lying on the edge of the spiritual spring pond, its green eyes fixed on the slowly swimming red-bearded carp. It seemed that it had not noticed that Xuan had returned. "I'm back," Xuan shouted to the opposite side. The patrolling grass puppet Uko turned his head 180 degrees. Its two dark, empty eye sockets looked in the direction of the voice and continued to patrol without stopping. The cloud stepping lynx ignored him and continued to stare at the red-bearded carp in the spiritual spring pond. Xuan was sharp-eyed and found that the tufts of grey-white hair on its two ears were shaking slightly, revealing its inner joy. Xuan went straight back into the house. The cloud stepping lynx turned its head and looked at Xuan's back. The hair on the tip of its ear moved slightly, and it quickly turned its head again when it noticed Xuan's approaching footsteps. There was a click. A piece of plump porcupine meat was thrown in front of the lynx. The stepping cloud lynx cried out while holding it in its mouth. It grabbed the meat with its white cloud-like paw and stuffed it into its mouth. Xuan chuckled and went back to the house. This time he went to the black market to deal with the second grade Lihuo sword that he had just obtained and the first grade magic weapon left by Kinming that had been in the storage bag for a long time. He got a piece of third grade Giovine and a first grade defensive magic weapon, the Iron Scale Shield. He neither lost nor gained spirit stones. He rented a guide talisman for 3 spirit stones, which just offset the 3 spirit stones earned from wrestling the flying sword and shield. He took the piece of Giovine from the storage bag. The dark black vine was about half a foot long. It was indeed too short to refine whip-like or rope-like magic weapons. However, this did not affect Xuan much. He spent a huge price to buy it, mainly to plant and cultivate it. He took this piece of snake-like vine and came to an open space in the spirit field. Each spiritual plant needs a certain amount of space, which makes a spiritual field of more than 1 mu a little insufficient. So he currently plans to take the route of valuing quality over quantity. The spiritual plants with large quantities, such as the firefly grass and the blood jade ginseng, are provided by Baikeo Tang. Other higher grade and more rare varieties can be obtained from other channels. Xuan performed the earth attracting technique, and the spiritual soil quietly changed, and a small crack appeared. He inserted the half-foot-long Giovine into the crack, leaving about 2/3 of the length outside. Threads of spiritual rain fell, landing on the dark and dry vines, and seeping into the spiritual soil around it. The spiritual soil gradually became moist, and the water spirit energy penetrated through the vine's epidermis and slowly seeped into its interior. Xuan's mind was focused on the dark winding vines. A thought flashed through his mind. Giovine, a third-grade spiritual plant, can be used to cultivate and raise dragon monsters after maturity. After special treatment, it can also be used to refine whips, ropes and other magical tools, or it can be used as the main material for some rare elixirs. When cultivating Giovine, nourishing it with the blood of snake monsters and dragon monsters can promote its rapid growth. The higher the grade of the relevant blood, the faster the vine grows. Along for blood that contains powerful power. Xuan instantly learned about its cultivation method through the immediate state of the newly planted Giovine. It needs the nourishment of snake monsters or dragon monsters. Generally speaking, after the cultivators hunt snake monsters outside, they pay more attention to their snakeskin, fangs, venom, etc., and generally do not pay much attention to their blood. It seems that I have to go to the market to look for it. It would be best if I can find it. If I can't find it, then use the spirit stone to entrust the cultivator to help me get fresh blood from the demon snake. Xuan thought secretly. Let him go to the wilderness and the secret realm to hunt demon snakes in person and get fresh snake blood. That was impossible. He would rather spend a little more spirit stones and hire a cultivator than to leave the many rare spirit plants in the spirit field and go outside to take risks. As for the Giant monster, he dared not even think about it. Even the weakest Giant monster was at least as powerful as a foundation building cultivator. Xuan had no hope of getting Giant blood. For the time being, plant it in the spirit field and then cultivate it properly when you find the blood of snake monsters. Now, using the spirit rain technique and the wood growth technique can still maintain its vitality, but if it continues like this, its growth will be extremely slow, which is not a long-term solution. After Xuan planted the Giovine in the spirit field, he inspected the many spirit plants in the spirit field. Third grade spiritual plants are indeed more troublesome. First and second grade spiritual plants only have requirements for the growing environment and special spiritual power, but third grade ones seem to have their own personalities. There are 2 third grade spiritual plants in the spiritual field. The Xuan fruit seems to be a mischievous ghost. It arranges the venue by itself and then sends people to look for it. If it can't be found, it's difficult to cultivate. This Giovine is even more demanding. A vine needs to be bathed in snake blood or even dragon blood. If I really have dragon blood, I might as well use it on myself. Xuan couldn't help but sigh as he looked at the growing fog generated by the Xuan fruit in front of him. Chapter 53 Doubt. The firefly grass is still honest and dutiful. There are many plants to plant, and the cultivation method is simple. More importantly, it can also bring rewards for cultivation. Xuan looked around the spiritual field. The other spiritual plants also had their own characteristics. The second grade sword grass of the steel straight grass, the first grade blood jade ginseng, that messed with the spiritual plant relationship and loved and killed each other. The second grade dark marrow ganoderma, that only wanted to hide in the dark and decay. And the second grade king neo spiritual tea, that only needed spiritual spring water for irrigation. In this way, the firefly grass is quite worry-free. Xuan walked around the area where the firefly grass was located and picked 12 mature firefly grasses. Among them, 4 were of good quality, 6 were of superior quality, and the other 2 were of perfect and easy quality. More than half of the firefly grass in the spiritual field has been picked, and there are only 39 of the total 100 firefly grasses left, and they are about to enter the mature stage. Among the 12 white light balls that appeared, 4 were cultivation rewards, 2 6-month cultivation, and 2 9-month cultivation, adding a total of 2.5 years of cultivation. Another 2.5 years. I have a lot of affinity with this number. Xuan remembered that this was not the first time that his cultivation had increased by 2.5 years. He circulated his spiritual power, and the surging spiritual power slowly calmed down, making his cultivation of the 6th level of key training more stable. There were also 3 white light balls that brought 3 first grade talismans, namely the sword key talisman, the exorcist talisman, and the explosive flame talisman. Xuan saved them all in his storage bag. The 3 white light balls opened 3 low-level spells, 2 wood growing spells, and 1 earth attracting spell. Xuan absorbed them and had a deeper understanding of the 2 spells. The earth attracting spell has reached the realm of minor success, while the wood growing spell has reached the realm of mastery. When it is performed, the speed of gathering wood type spiritual power is faster and the quantity is greater, which has a better effect on the birth of spiritual plants. The 2 white light balls brought by the 2 perfect quality firefly grasses. One opened a first grade spell, the Genjin sword art. After the light balls were integrated into his body, Lu Xuan had a clear understanding, and his understanding of this sword art seemed to have reached another level. As soon as he thought about it, a golden sword energy flew out from his fingertips. The sword energy seemed to have life, flying around Lu Xuan, and the speed was getting faster and faster, leaving golden phantoms, as if a golden barrier was built with Lu Xuan as the center. After a dozen breaths, the sword energy gradually turned into nothingness, and the golden phantoms left behind also became dim, and finally disappeared. It goes without saying that the speed of casting is close to instantaneous. The control of the sword energy has reached a state of being able to do whatever one wants, as if one's arm is like a finger. The sword energy can stay in the outside world for a longer time. After Lu Xuan carefully experienced this experience package, the Genjin sword art changed in subtle places. Another white light ball brought a first grade Puan pill recipe, and he had a deeper understanding of how to refine Puan pill. Why not just accumulate a few more pill recipe experience packages, and then if you don't refine it, it's fine. Once you start refining the pill, you can refine the pill with the highest success rate and the best quality. Lu Xuan couldn't help thinking that he had already eaten several pill recipes anyway, so it didn't matter at this time. There were already 26 mature firefly grasses in the storage bag. If there were more, the number of white jade boxes for holding spiritual plants would not be enough. Lu Xuan planned to go to Baikeotang and see if there was any snake monster blood in the casual cultivator market. The hall of Baikeotang was filled with the aroma of medicine. Manager he saw Lu Xuan coming from afar and put down his work. "Lu kid, you're here? How about the goods you brought this time?" "Of course there is no problem with the goods. It depends on whether you have enough spiritual stones." Lu Xuan slapped his palm on the wooden cabinet in front of Manager He and raised his eyebrows. "I said you are fat, but you are panting." Manager He snorted coldly, unable to bear Lu Xuan's smug look in front of him. "What's the matter? How many spiritual stones in Baikeotang can your spiritual plants consume? 1%? Or 1,000th? Old He, our Baikeotang is so wealthy." Lu Xuan smiled warmly and took a cup of steaming spiritual tea from the medicine boy who came to pour tea. "Please have some tea, old man. You are a good judge of character. Can you show me the firefly grass you brought?" Lu Xuan restrained his smile, straightened his expression, and took out 26 mature firefly grasses from his storage bag. The red cloud pine nut was not suitable for refining pills, so Lu Xuan kept it for himself and would sell it to other cultivators when the time was right. "Superior, superior, perfect." The thin old man nodded continuously while checking the quality of the firefly grass. He counted the number and put the firefly grasses of different qualities into different categories. A total of 26 firefly grasses, including 8 of good quality, 13 of superior quality, and 5 of perfect quality. He was no longer surprised by Lu Xuan's performance and had long been accustomed to it. Seeing that Lu Xuan had no objection, he continued. "Still follow the old price, 3 spirit stones and 50 broken spirits for each good quality plant, 20 broken spirits for each superior quality plant, and 30 broken spirits for each perfect quality plant. So the total is 96 spirit stones plus 10 broken spirits, right? You are a quick thinker, so it's not wrong." Lu Xuan took the more than 90 spirit stones handed over by the old man, scanned them with his spiritual sense, and put them into the storage bag. He talked with the thin old man for a while and planned to leave. "Dao Lu, please stay." Just as he walked out of the gate of Baikeo Hall, a slightly familiar voice called Lu Xuan. Lu Xuan looked back and saw a middle-aged cultivator of the 4th level of key training waiting by the gate, with a hint of anxiety on his face. He was one of the 3 spiritual plant masters who had previously partnered with Lu Xuan to buy the method of cultivating high-quality spiritual plants. "Dao Aozao, what's the matter?" Lu Xuan asked. "I have seen the Lingyiang grass that fellow Daoist Lu just handed over to Manager He. It is indeed as good as its reputation. The lowest quality is good, and there are several perfect quality plants. The middle-aged cultivator said with a wry smile. Fellow Daoist Zal, if you have anything to say, just tell me. Lu Xuan noticed something wrong in his words and said calmly, it's like this. After I and two good friends learned the planting method from fellow Daoist Lu last time, we gave up most of our cultivation time when we went back and devoted ourselves to the meticulous cultivation of firefly grass. A batch of firefly grass happened to mature these 2 days, but it seems to have achieved little effect. There is a big gap between what you, fellow Daoist Lu, planted. How many firefly grasses did you harvest? It didn't take long to cultivate them meticulously, right? We picked 20 firefly grasses at a time. As for the meticulous cultivation as fellow Daoist instructed, it took less than 7 days. 20 firefly grasses are not a large number and do not mean much. Of course, the most important thing is that the time for meticulous cultivation is too short. When I cultivate spiritual plants, I use that method from the time the seeds enter the spiritual soil until they mature. It takes 2 or 3 months. Fellow Daoist Zal, you only have 7 days. You are a little too anxious. Lu Xuan said lightly. But, the quality difference between my firefly grass and yours is too big. Most of yours are of top quality, and there are quite a few of them of perfect quality, but mine are very rare. The middle-aged cultivator stammered and said. So, you suspect that I'm hiding something? I didn't tell you everything. Lu Xuan's expression turned cold. Chapter 54. After a long drought, there is a downpour of rain. 2 or 3 drops. Of course I won't doubt you, fellow Daoist Lu. The middle-aged cultivator was stared at by Lu Xuan and took 2 steps back. I just want to know more about your planting method, fellow Daoist Lu. After all, I paid more than 30 spirit stones for it. Hearing this, Lu Xuan sneered. Okay, then I ask you, has the quality of the 20 spirit firefly grass you picked improved? Compared to the past, there are 2 or 3 more good quality spirit firefly grasses, and the top quality has not changed. The middle-aged cultivator answered truthfully. That's it? 2 or 3 more firefly grasses from ordinary quality to good quality, and it's only been a short time since you started to cultivate them. If you cultivate them for a long time, the average quality can be improved. 3 more good quality ones, you can earn nearly 1 more spirit stone. If you plant dozens or hundreds of firefly grasses, you can earn several spirit stones. Firefly grass is a non-grade spiritual plant with a short maturation time. You can plant 3 or 4 batches a year. In this way, you can earn back the spirit stones in just a few years. Not to mention, this method is also effective for other spiritual plants. So, fellow Daoist Zal, what else do you have to doubt? After Lu Xuan finished speaking, he no longer paid attention to the middle-aged cultivator and walked away. Before he had walked far, he was grabbed by him. I gave up most of my cultivation time and paid so many spirit stones just to earn a little bit of spirit stones? Today you must tell me the trick, otherwise I will not give up, he said fiercely, with a hint of threat in his tone. During this period, he did not practice much and spent almost all his time on the fine cultivation of spiritual plants. He originally thought that he could get high quality Lingyian grass, but the result disappointed him greatly, and the improvement effect was extremely effective. There was such a big gap between reality and expectation, and he subconsciously thought that Lu Xuan was hiding something from him, and he couldn't help but come to Baikao Tang to wait for Lu Xuan, wanting to get the key to cultivating spiritual plants from Lu Xuan. I have already made it very clear. Lu Xuan shook his hand away, and a sword energy talisman quietly slid to his wrist. Giving up the time for cultivation is your own choice. I can guarantee that my method is correct and effective. As long as you follow my teachings and cultivate spiritual plants for a long time, the average quality of the spiritual plants will definitely be improved. As for whether you can get the perfect quality of Lingyian grass or other spiritual plants, it depends on the personal talent and effort of the spiritual plant master. I gave up cultivation and used all my energy to cultivate spiritual plants. In addition, I have a strong affinity for spiritual plants and can keenly perceive the needs of spiritual plants. Only in this way can I grow spiritual plants of perfect quality. That's all. Please don't bother me anymore, Brother Zal. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. Lu Xuan warned the middle-aged cultivator and left without paying any attention to his nonsense. You will be punished for doing this." The angry voice of the middle-aged cultivator came from behind. Lu Xuan secretly laughed. He thought he had a clear conscience and told this casual spiritual plant master that the method was indeed effective and could slightly improve the quality of the spiritual plants he planted. The only and biggest difference between the two is that Lu Xuan can clearly grasp the real-time status of the spiritual plants and can meet their subtle needs at any time. The appearance of the white light ball can make him not worry about the stagnation of cultivation and the loss of treasures. As long as the spiritual plant master can calm down and follow Lu Xuan's instructions to cultivate the spiritual plants in detail, it won't take long to earn back the spiritual stones he spent. But he was obviously eager for success, and after seeing the quality of the spiritual plants planted by Lu Xuan, he was a little unbalanced and behaved inappropriately. As for the retribution he mentioned, Lu Xuan thought that he had a deep cultivation and many treasures and talismans, so he didn't take his words to heart. He came to the market for scattered cultivators. Since there have been cultivators who have been transformed into monsters that are neither human nor ghost, there are obviously many more cultivators from the law enforcement hall in the market than before. The cultivators are always vigilant when they come and go. In such a dull atmosphere, Lu Xuan walked quickly and swept his eyes across the stalls on both sides. There were many monks selling materials of monster beasts on the stalls, most of which came from the wilderness and secret realms, and a few were raised by themselves, among which monster beast meat was the most. After all, eating monster beast meat can slightly increase the spiritual power in the body of the monks, which can be regarded as a daily consumption. Secondly, there are those special parts that can be used to refine magic tools, such as the fur, scales, bones, etc. of some monster beasts. Occasionally, when seeing a stall selling monster beast blood, Lu Xuan went up with expectation to ask about the monster species, but unfortunately it was not the blood of snake monster beasts. Finally, he found a bottle of python blood on the stall of a young monk who was in the first level of key training. The python was called the black line snake, and it was not a good quality monster beast. According to the boy, he and several companions worked together to kill the python. Because he did less work, he did not get the python skin and fangs, but only a small bottle of black line snake blood, which he placed on the stall with a triad mentality. Lu Xuan spent 70 broken spirits to buy the small bottle of black line snake blood from the boy. The boy thought the snake blood would just rot in his hands, but he didn't expect to get 70 spirit fragments by accident. He quickly bowed to Lu Xuan to thank him. Lu Xuan took the snake blood and returned to his courtyard. Entering the spiritual field, everything was normal. The half-human high grass puppet was still tirelessly patrolling the spiritual field. When passing by Lu Xuan, the footsteps did not stop. The huge grey grass head turned to the direction where Lu Xuan was, staring blankly, and turned nearly 180 degrees before returning to its original position. After absorbing 2 drops of grass spirit essence, the grass puppet's intelligence has obviously improved, probably from an inanimate puppet to the level of a 1 or 2 year old baby. What remains unchanged is the heart that is determined to guard the spiritual field. Lu Xuan sighed, feeling fortunate that he had such a loyal tool man. He looked around the spiritual field. All the spiritual plants were growing normally. There were a few that needed nourishment, so he would perform the spirit rain technique or the wood growth technique to ensure that they could get the greatest satisfaction. Finally, he came to the area where the dragon vine was. He could not wait to take out the small bottle of black snake blood, unplugged the bottle, and carefully poured the snake blood on the curved vines. After dripping on the Jiaoteng vine, the bright red blood did not drip down, but tightly adhered to the surface of the vine. Then, it slowly seeped into the interior of the vine. The originally dark black vine turned black and red after absorbing the black snake blood. Upon closer inspection, the winding and twisting vines with twisted roots seemed like a small snake awakening after dormant for a winter, swimming slowly. After a few breaths, it stopped. Lu Xuan's mind was focused on the Jiaoteng vine. It seems that something good has entered the body, but it's gone before I can taste it. He looked like he wanted to have long drought and then a rain to nourish himself, but in the end, only 2 or 3 drops of rain fell. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. we cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55 Attack. The Jiao vine is a third-grade spiritual plant, so Lu Xuan naturally would not think that a small bottle of inferior black snake blood could meet its growth needs. He mainly wanted to see what changes the Jiao vine could produce after bathing in snake blood. The result was quite satisfactory. Even though this bottle of black snake blood did not quench its thirst at all, the Jiao vine still showed gratifying changes and was no longer dry as before. It seems that I have to try to find more capacity and higher grade snake monster blood in the future. Lu Xuan looked at the Jiao vine, which still maintained its black and red color, and felt the obvious improvement in its vitality, thinking. For the next 3 days, Lu Xuan stayed in the house at ease, focusing all his energy on cultivating spiritual plants and raising spiritual beasts. There were common supplies such as spiritual rice and monster meat in the house, which could cope with it for a period of time, and there was no need to worry about the troubles in life. In 3 days, 13 of the last 39 spiritual fireflies entered a fully mature state. Among them, there were 5 plants of good quality, 6 plants of superior quality, and 2 plants of perfect quality. Planting will yield rewards, and 13 white light balls brought Lu Xuan 13 rewards. The total cultivation level has been improved for 2 years, further consolidating Lu Xuan's strength in the 6th level of key training. In addition, there are 4 first grade talismans and 3 magic experience packages, namely the Earth Attraction Technique, the Wood Birth Technique, and the Zhengjin Sword Technique. Finally, there are 2 recipes for Yuan pills, which were also absorbed by Lu Xuan, adding a lot of theoretical knowledge of refining Yuan pills. On the red cloud pine, 2 of the remaining 4 red cloud pine nuts are about to enter a fully mature state. Of course, it is not impossible to pick them now. After all, they look the same as the first red cloud pine that was picked before. It's just that Lu Xuan can grasp the subtle state of the spiritual plant at any time, and he knows that the pine nuts have not yet entered the best maturity period. If they are picked early or later, the quality of the pine nuts will be slightly affected, which will also affect the rewards brought by the white light ball. Therefore, they can only be picked at the most appropriate time. Lu Xuan kept 2 pine nuts first, and decided to come back to take a look the next morning. That night, the night fell, and the world was silent. The spiritual field was shrouded in a thin aura shield, and seemed to fall into a deep sleep as the night fell. Only the grass puppet dragged its thin grey grass legs and slowly patrolled the ridges of the spiritual field. A figure like a cloud of smoke floated in front of the formation. The figure paused, and a cultivator wearing a nightgown, with his face covered, quietly looked at the thin aura shield. It should be here. I don't know what Brother Zhao was thinking. A casual cultivator at the 3rd level of key training didn't even have the confidence to come here, and he even spent spirit stones to invite me to come and take a look. It seems that he has been planting spiritual plants for too long, and he has been with those flowers and plants every day, and his sharpness has almost been worn out. However, according to him, this casual spiritual plant master is very valued in Beikeotang. There are many rare spiritual medicines planted in the spiritual field. After getting rid of him, they will all belong to me. A few thoughts flashed through his mind, and the figure took out a talisman with a flashing aura from the storage bag. To avoid disturbing other monks and attracting the patrol guards of the law enforcement hall, I can only use this 2nd grade soul breaking talisman. There are generally 3 ways for monks to break the formation. One is to have a formation master with profound attainments in the art of formation to break the formation from the root. The second is to use related formation breaking talismans, magic tools, etc. to quickly break the formation. The last is to break it with brute force. No matter how exquisite your formation is, I will defeat 10 with my own strength and directly break it. For a 1st grade formation, with his 5th level key training, it is not difficult to break the formation with brute force, but it will make a lot of noise and easily cause a commotion. In desperation, the masked monk had to use a 2nd grade soul breaking talisman. No matter what formation, there is a way for the spiritual power to operate. The higher the grade, the more complex and changeable the spiritual power, and there will also be other special and magical features. the second grade soul breaking talisman in his hand, can quickly find the spiritual power of the first grade or lower grade formations, thereby discovering the flaws and easily breaking the formations, saving a lot of time. The spiritual light on the soul breaking talisman became strong and eventually merged into the thin spiritual energy cover. Soon, a trace of spiritual power emerged from the round spiritual energy cover, flowing in a mysterious and complex pattern. The masked monk's eyes lit up and soon found a flaw in this first grade protective formation. After dozens of breaths, he easily passed through the formation and entered the spiritual field. In the hazy night, what came into view was a large area of spiritual firefly grass, with fluorescent lights flashing like stars on the slender leaves. 20 or 30 mature spiritual fireflies. Just these, their value far exceeds the soul-breaking talisman I just used. The masked monk was as light as a swallow, shuttling between the spiritual fields, rushing towards the house not far away, while sweeping the spiritual plants in the spiritual fields on both sides. The other party was just a casual cultivator at the third level of key training, so he did not take it seriously. His attention was more focused on the many spiritual plants in the spiritual field, and he had completely regarded them as his own possessions. There are about 20 first grade blood jade ginsengs, and they look pretty good. I can go to Daoist Zhao to exchange them for a lot of spiritual stones. After all, he promised that he only needed the jade slips of the classics on this casual cultivator. These 3 should be the second grade King Neo spirituality he mentioned. Hey, listening to his previous complaints, it seems that he can't compete with this little casual cultivator at the third level of key training. Hey, what is this? The masked monk slowed down his pace and his attention was attracted by a spiritual herb in front of him. The spiritual herb was about 2 feet long, black in color, standing upright in the spiritual soil, and its body was like a sword. There were actually wisps of subtle sword intent wandering in the surrounding spiritual soil. Even though he had never planted spiritual plants before, he could tell at a glance that such a strange spiritual herb was rare. And this vine, at first glance I thought it was a dead snake. Snake-like vines, flying sword-like spiritual herbs, as well as many spiritual fireflies, blood jade ginseng, and 3 precious King Mio spiritual tea seedlings. This trip is totally worth it. The masked monk thought with ease. The number and high grade of spiritual plants in the spiritual field of this casual spiritual plant master made him feel pleasantly surprised. Get rid of that little casual cultivator, and they will all be mine. He increased his speed by 3 points, and a short sword blade as black as ink appeared in front of him. The sword blade trembled slightly, as if it would shoot out at any time, penetrate the wall, and directly pierce the body of the monk inside. Suddenly, several thin grass ropes quickly sprang out from the spiritual field behind him, like a thorn in the flesh, and wrapped around his ankles and arms. The inky black sword blade turned into a black light, wrapped around several grass ropes, and cut them into pieces. Under the guidance of the monk, he followed the direction of the straw rope, and cut off the 4 limbs of the straw puppet. It turned out to be just a straw puppet, but it is a little more aggressive. Seeing that the 4 limbs of the straw puppet were cut off, the masked monk was relieved. In the new week, I ask for recommendations, monthly tickets, and most importantly, follow-up reading. Thank you all. Chapter 56. Are you awake? Just when he was about to step forward and completely kill the straw puppet, suddenly, a golden sword energy shot out, as fast as lightning, and arrived in front of the masked monk in the blink of an eye. What kind of sword technique is this? The sword technique was so sudden and fast that the masked monk did not have enough time to use his defensive magic weapon. With all his souls surging, he could only turn his body with difficulty. With a whoosh, the golden sword energy directly pierced his shoulder, and blood immediately flowed out, spilling all over the spiritual field. The remaining force of the sword energy did not decrease, and pierced into the courtyard wall behind him. Run quickly. The masked monk ignored the severe pain in his shoulder, and a thought flashed through his mind, wanting to escape from this spiritual field. He was experienced, and knew that a sword technique of this level was definitely not something that a small casual cultivator at the third level of key training could perform. If there were a few more sword techniques like this, or even just one, he would be at risk of falling here. A strong wind came from behind him, and a silver white sword blade followed him. The masked monk's mind moved, and the spiritual energy circulated rapidly. An ice wall appeared in the air, just blocking the fierce silver-white sword blade. Unexpectedly, when the sword blade was about to collide with the ice wall, the silver-white short blade silently cracked, and dozens of thin fragments, like silver-white butterflies, attacked the masked monk from all directions. Such an unexpected attack method made the masked monk confused, and fragments pierced his limbs, shoulders, and chest. A black shadow flashed in front of him, and a black spirit beast appeared in front of him nimbly, staring at the masked monk with green pupils coldly, and the strange sight made him lose consciousness for a moment. Before he could react, the spirit beast raised its thick white paw and slapped him on the head, directly knocking the monk to the ground, rolling on the ground a few times, and fainted from pain. The masked monk's consciousness woke up from the infinite darkness. He did not open his eyes to observe the surroundings at the first time, but carefully felt the current state of his body. The situation was very bad. When he tried to transfer the spiritual power in his body, it was like a stone sinking into the sea. His Danshin Ki was destroyed, and his cultivation was lost. At the same time, his body was tied up by something, and he could not move. The wounds on his limbs were exposed to the air, and he felt severe pain. There was a faint chill in his throat, heart, and lower genitals. It seemed that, as long as he made a slight movement, the chill would invade his body. "Are you awake?" A gentle voice sounded not far away from him. The monk still closed his eyes, and seemed to be still in a coma. "If you really don't wake up, I will make sure you never wake up again," the gentle voice said lightly. The masked monk opened his eyes helplessly, his pupils moved, and he took in the surrounding situation. He was now in a simply decorated house, tied up with grey-black straw ropes, and the silver-white fragments that stopped in front of his fatal weakness were the previous ones. A young monk was standing in front of him, his eyes clear and bright. "I didn't expect that a casual spiritual plant master like you could hide so deeply. That sword art should be close to the master's level. Even the sword masters I met before rarely have such exquisite swordsmanship as yours. Besides, you are still so young, and your cultivation is definitely far more than the third level of key training." The masked monk regretted more and more as he spoke. He originally thought that dealing with a casual spiritual plant master at the third level of key training would be a piece of cake, but he didn't expect that he would capsize in the gutter, be seriously injured, and be easily captured. "Tell me, why did you enter my house and try to harm me?" Lu Xuan ignored the masked monk and asked with a smile. "I just happened to pass by here and wanted to enter your spiritual field to steal a few spiritual plants. I didn't expect to run into a tough guy." The masked monk made up a random excuse and tried to get away with it. "Do you think I will believe you?" Lu Xuan couldn't help but feel funny. His expression turned cold, and the fragment that stopped in front of the monk's throat went deeper, pierced the skin, and deep red blood oozed out. "Just tell me who asked you to come." The masked monk fell silent. "Actually, whether you tell me or not, I know who it is. I have always lived in seclusion and treated people kindly. If I could provoke him and make him want to kill me, you can figure it out by just thinking about it. But if you don't tell me, the outcome will be very different. This magic weapon in front of you will cut you into thin slices and try its best not to let you die. When you still have a breath, I will send you to the black market. There are many evil cultivators there who buy cultivators' souls. You should be able to sell for a good price as a mid-level cultivator like you." Lu Xuan said coldly. "If I tell you, can you let me go? If you tell me, I will give you a clean ending. If you don't tell me, you will have to endure endless torture of your body and soul. You can choose." It was Zhao Heiwen, the spiritual plant master. "He gave me a spiritual stone to let me come and kill you. He promised to give me all the spiritual plants in your spiritual field in exchange for the jade slips of the classics on you." The masked monk no longer hesitated and told everything. "Sure enough, it's that persistent spiritual plant master. He probably wants to learn how to grow perfect quality spiritual plants from me." Lu Xuan had already guessed most of it, and after getting the answer from the masked monk, he was completely confirmed. "Tell me his address. Don't try to deceive me. You know that he and I are both employed spiritual plant masters of Beikeo Tang, and it's not difficult to get his information." "Okay, I'll tell you. After revealing the spiritual plant master, the masked monk no longer had any scruples and told him everything he knew, still holding on to the idea that Lu Xuan would let him go. "Okay, you can go on your way with peace of mind," Lu Xuan said softly, and the thin fragment in front of the monk's throat suddenly stretched forward and pierced deeply into his throat. After killing the monk, Lu Xuan's spiritual power was activated, and a head-sized fireball appeared above the monk's corpse. Then, it turned into clusters of flames and fell on his corpse. In 10 or so breaths, he was burned to black ash. Lu Xuan took out another evil repelling talisman, and the hazy white light wavered around the black ash. Nothing unusual happened. He was completely relieved and swept the thick layer of black ash on the ground together and sprinkled it on the soil of the spiritual field. "You little guys escaped a disaster tonight, so I'll give you some good fertilizer to make up for it." Since Kinming, the second cultivator who turned bones and ashes into fertilizer, appeared in the spiritual field. Lu Xuan dealt with the yard a little, and his spiritual consciousness checked the surroundings. He asked the green-eyed cloud-stepping lynx to take care of the house. His figure flashed and came outside the house silently. There are cultivators patrolling the market day and night, but the protection strength of each area is different. For example, the outer area of the northern district, where Lu Xuan lived, before was mixed with good and bad people, and the protection strength was better than nothing. The courtyard where he lives now is relatively closer to the inside, and the protection strength is much stronger, but usually there are only a few low-level key training cultivators pretending. Only in the core area would there be mid-level or even high-level key training cultivators guarding well, to prevent evil cultivators or evil spirits from invading. A moment later, Lu Xuan arrived at his destination, outside the yard of the spiritual plant master named Zhao. Chapter 57, Basic Talisman Collection. Zhao Heiwen lay in bed, tossing and turning, unable to fall asleep for a long time. When he thought about the method of growing perfect quality spiritual plants, he became very excited and could not calm down at all. That day, after Lu Xuan refused to teach him the method of growing perfect quality spiritual plants, he came back and became more and more angry. His greed grew bigger and bigger. Finally, Hu Lingxi invited a monk he knew to directly seize the secret from Lu Xuan. Although the quality of spiritual plants improved after he cultivated them in detail, he was not satisfied with the slight improvement after seeing Lu Xuan's results. He wanted to directly grow perfect quality spiritual plants. More than an hour has passed. He should be back soon. He lay in bed, estimating the time when his friend might come back. He waited for a while, but there was still no movement. Will there be any accidents? Zhao Heiwen frowned slightly, thinking worriedly. There can't be any accidents. That guy is just a casual cultivator of the 3rd level of key training, and he doesn't have time to cultivate spiritual power and magic. Even I was very confident in the past, not to mention a cultivator of the 5th level of key training who has a deeper cultivation and is more adept at fighting. It should be that he was delayed for some time after killing him. After all, it takes a lot of time to pick spiritual plants and deal with the aftermath. I hired him with spiritual stones and promised to give him all the spiritual plants. As long as the boy has the classics or jade slips, he is not a spiritual plant master and should not have the idea of swallowing the cultivation method. The middle-aged cultivator Zhao Heiwen analyzed optimistically, as if he had already seen himself getting the cultivation method, planting spiritual plants of perfect quality, and being valued by Beikei Tang and even the big families in the market. The future is bright. While he was imagining, his eyes were indeed shining. A brilliant sword energy suddenly came, and when it was about to pierce the body of the middle-aged cultivator lying, it turned nimbly, and turned to the top of the cultivator's head at an extremely fast speed, penetrated from the top of his head, and twisted his mind fiercely. The last scene that stayed in the middle-aged monk's mind was the bright golden light brought by the sword energy. Lu Xuan floated into the house as light as a swallow, and took away the storage bag on the waist of the middle-aged monk. Then, 2 first-grade explosive flame talismans were activated respectively, and the monk's corpse and the furniture in the house instantly burned fiercely, completely destroying the hole left by the sword technique on the top of the head and the traces of Lu Xuan's appearance in the house. Before the fire caused a commotion, Lu Xuan had already left. He returned home smoothly and carefully reviewed the actions tonight. After arriving at the courtyard where the spiritual plant master lived, he entered it relatively easily. There was only a low-grade protective formation outside the yard to prevent some strange beasts and insects from invading the spiritual field. Xuan broke the formation effortless. In the actual 6th level cultivation of key training, the Zhengjin sword technique, that was close to the master level, and the unexpected silver breaking blade, the masked monk and the spiritual plant master were solved very smoothly without any ripples. He did not pick the spiritual plants in the middle-aged monk's spiritual field. First, they were all in the growth stage and could not be directly exchanged for spiritual stones. Second, it would take a certain amount of time to pick them. In order to avoid any trouble, he took the storage bag and left. On the wooden table, there were 2 storage bags and a black flying sword. The flying sword was a first-grade magic weapon left by the masked monk. He first used his spiritual power to open the storage bag of the masked monk with a higher cultivation level. There were not many things in it, more than 10 first-grade talismans, 2 bottles of elixirs, 1 bottle of Xuan that could quickly replenish spiritual power, and 1 bottle of Xuan that could heal some simple injuries. In addition, there were about 80 spiritual stones. Xuan's net worth reached about 360 spiritual stones. He looted all the things in the masked monk's storage bag, and then turned his attention to the storage bag of the middle-aged spiritual plant master. A bottle of elixir, opened the bottle stopper, only 5 Xuan was spinning at the bottom of the bottle. 6 spiritual seeds, I don't know what grade or type they are. It's so shabby, it's embarrassing for us spiritual plant masters. Xuan complained. After becoming a spiritual plant master, he did not systematically learn the knowledge of cultivating spiritual plants. He simply and crudely started by cultivating the spiritual firefly grass. After obtaining the strange light ball in the spiritual field, he only had a deep understanding of the spiritual plants he planted, and the rest was still in a state of ignorance. He did not plan to rush to plant these 6 spiritual seeds for the time being. After all, there were already enough spiritual plants in the more than 1 acre of spiritual field where he lived. The spiritual firefly grass and blood jade ginseng, which won by quantity, had 26 spiritual firefly grasses that were about to mature, and 20 blood jade ginsengs. The first grade red cloud pine and the second grade king neo spiritual tea were not many in number, but the value was stable. The former still had 4 pine nuts left, and the latter had 3 seedlings growing vigorously. There were also mysterious and rare types, the first grade pure snow lotus, the second grade dark marrow ganoderma, the second grade sword grass, the third grade phantom smoke fruit, and the third grade dragon vine. Most of them were successfully cultivated by him relying on his grasp of the real-time status of the spiritual plants. In order to maximize the rewards of the light ball, he adopted a refined cultivation method, which required him to perform the spirit rain technique and wood growth technique many times every day, and there were additional requirements for things like sword grass and phantom smoke fruit. The limitation of the area of the spiritual field, the limited time and energy, and the frequent consumption of spiritual power made it impossible for him to plant a large number of spiritual plants. The number and variety of spiritual plants could only be roughly controlled. After counting the harvest this time, Xuan focused his attention on the formation outside the yard. The invasion of the masked monk made him more urgent to change the formation. As his cultivation level improved faster and faster, the number of spiritual plants in the spiritual field increased, and the grade became higher and higher. The first grade protective formation left by the tooth line was gradually not enough. The first grade and second grade formations correspond to the key training monks. The first grade protective formation has limited protection in front of the middle level key training monks. If there is a second grade spirit breaking talisman, it can easily break into the formation. There are more than 300 spirit stones in his hand, which is enough to change a second grade protective formation. Dawn came before he knew it, and Xuan did not rest anymore. He ran to the spiritual field to check the status of the spiritual plants. He was lucky that the fight with the masked monk last night did not affect the spiritual plants in the spiritual field. Xuan patrolled a circle and found that the spiritual plants were in good condition, especially the dark marrow fungus. Perhaps because of the special fertilizer added to the spiritual soil, the dark red mycelium seemed to have spread more. On the red cloud pine, in the thin red pine leaves, 2 red cloud pine nuts were fully mature. Lu Xuan picked the first one, and the pine nut was of high quality, slightly better than the first one he picked before. A white ball of light appeared at the location of the picked red cloud pine nut. Lu Xuan absorbed it, and the ball of light turned into countless light spots and poured into his body. Or thought flashed through his mind. Harvest a red cloud pine nut and get a copy of basic talisman collection. Countless knowledge about talismans poured into Lu Xuan's sea of consciousness, almost bursting his head. It records the production methods of dozens of common first grade talismans, the types of materials required, processing methods, rune drawing, etc. The rewards brought by mature first grade spiritual plants are different. I remember that the perfect quality Lingyan grass will produce a first grade PU and pill recipe, while the red cloud pine nut will directly produce a book of talisman drawing methods, teaching dozens of first grade talismans at one time. Lu Xuan compared them, and looked at another mature red cloud pine nut expectantly. Chapter 58 Red Needle. The second red cloud pine nut was picked. It was also of top quality. Lu Xuan put it into the storage bag, and looked at the slightly flickering white light ball on the red cloud pine. The light ball turned into countless light points, and poured into his body. Or thought flashed through his mind. Harvest a red cloud pine nut, and obtain the second grade magic weapon red thread needle. A thin red needle appeared in Lu Xuan's hand. The red needle was about 3 inches long and very light. It was as if nothing was pinched between the fingers. Lu Xuan injected a trace of spiritual power, and his spiritual consciousness moved. With a whoosh, the red needle disappeared from his hand in an instant. He followed the weak induction, and found the red needle in the middle of the wall. The needle body had completely penetrated the thick stone wall. Under the control of the spiritual consciousness, the red thread needle flew out of the stone wall, and danced around Lu Xuan at an extremely fast speed, bringing countless red thread phantoms around him. Needle-type magic tools are relatively rare. This red needle is extremely concealed, and its speed is also a few points faster than the silver breaking blade. In addition, its terrifying piercing ability makes it a supreme weapon for sneak attacks. The red needle was too small, so Lu Xuan first put it into a jade box, and then into the storage bag. 2 red cloud pine nuts, both of high quality. One opened a book basic talisman collection, which records the refining methods of dozens of first grade common talismans, and the other opened a second grade needle type magic tool, the red needle. It is worthy of being a first grade spiritual plant. The reward is much richer than the non-grade spiritual firefly grass and eclipse moon fruit. Lu Xuan couldn't help but sigh. With his current 6th level cultivation, the first grade talismans and non-grade spells opened by the spiritual firefly grass are a bit useless, but at present, it is the only one that can open the cultivation reward. Therefore, before discovering new spiritual plants that can gain cultivation, it is still necessary to plant a large number of spiritual fireflies. After picking 2 mature red cloud pine nuts, Lu Xuan came to the grass puppet. The grass puppet had its limbs cut off by the masked monk in the middle of the night. Now only the huge head and the grey grass body below are left, which looks extremely weird. At this moment, the huge grey grass tumor on its head is constantly extending with grey and black dry grass. The dry grass gathers at one arm and slowly weaves. It is a good interpretation of the phrase disabled body but strong will. Unfortunately, the efficiency is too slow. After such a long time, only a small section of the shoulder is woven. Lu Xuan, who usually only feeds it with broken spirits, is generous for once. He took out a spirit stone from the storage bag and stuffed it into the grass tumor on the grass puppet's head. You performed well last night, so I will reward you with a spirit stone. After you weave the limbs, continue to help me guard the spirit field. Guard the spirit field. Guard the spirit field. With his mind focused, Lu Xuan sensed the obsession deep in the heart of the grass puppet. I'm really touched by the good employees of the spiritual plant master. With the spiritual stone providing spiritual power, the number of grey grass extending from the grey grass tumor increased by a few, but the speed was still slow. Lu Xuan had to leave it alone to heal slowly. Before he took a few steps, suddenly, a rough cry came from his feet. Lu Xuan looked in the direction of the sound, and saw the young cloud stepping lynx passing by his feet with 4 thick paws like white clouds. The steps were elegant, the demeanor was calm, and the green eyes seemed to be disdainful of Lu Xuan. Lu Xuan, who had already known its true face, looked at the cloud-stepping lynx and couldn't help laughing. Okay, you performed very well last night. I will reward you with 2 more porcupine jerky at noon. The cloud-stepping lynx seemed not to hear it and continued to pace leisurely. The 2 small tufts of grey hair on its pointed ears shook slightly, but it showed its inner joy. After dealing with the grass puppet and the cloud-stepping lynx, Xuan took out a handful of spiritual rice and threw it into the spiritual spring pool. The 3 red-bearded carps fought for it, and the spring water stirred up waves, causing the snow-white lotus leaves of the pure snow lotus to sway gently under the impact of the ripples. Xuan took advantage of the mist before it dissipated and started his day as a spiritual plant master. According to the needs of each spiritual plant, he controlled the landing range, spiritual rain capacity, and watering time of the spiritual rain technique to allow them to be fully nourished. By the way, he also ruthlessly separated the entangled first grade blood jade ginseng. There was a blood jade ginseng surrounded by 8, all around, entangled with each other. Dealing with 8 blood jade ginsengs at the same time, I would like to call you the king of ginsengs. Xuan used his spiritual power to carefully isolate them, so that the blood jade ginseng in the middle would not be directly squeezed dry by the other 8. He also cast a sword technique on the sword grass to nourish it with sword energy. The smoke generated by the phantom smoke fruit became larger, and the spiritual consciousness could not penetrate it. He had to explore slowly, trying to gather his mind everywhere, and finally found its location. For those in the rapid growth period, he had to add a wood growth technique to urge them to grow as quickly as possible. Simple but boring, busy and fulfilling. After all the work was done, half a day had passed. Xuan returned to the eaves, looking at the many spiritual plants growing vigorously in the spiritual field, wiping the fine beads of sweat on his forehead, and showing a satisfied smile. He looked like a spiritual plant master who loved planting, and it was completely unexpected that he had killed 2 mid-level key training cultivators not long ago. After a short rest, Xuan decided to go to the scattered cultivator market to see if he could find a good second-grade defense formation in the blood of snake monsters. He also went to Baikao to see what reactions and changes would be caused after the death of the spiritual plant master named Zhao. He adjusted the breath holding method to show his spiritual power to the 4th level of key training. The surface cultivation level jumped from the low level key training to the middle level key training, which could avoid some unnecessary troubles as much as possible. When he first entered this spiritual field, he showed the cultivation level of the 3rd level of key training. In less than a year, he broke through the 4th level of key training. Although the improvement of cultivation level is relatively rapid among casual cultivators, it is still within the scope of understanding. As for the 6th level of key training, he did not dare to expose it. There is a world of difference between the 3rd level of key training, and the 4th level of key training, and the 3rd level of key training, and the 6th level of key training. Anyone with a discerning eye can see that there is a big problem, which can easily attract the prying and coveting of other cultivators. Everything was normal in Baikao Hall. The death of the spiritual plant masters did not cause much waves. Only occasionally heard a medicine boy who processed herbs mentioned it. This is understandable. Although there are patrol guards from the law enforcement hall in the market, it is still difficult to avoid the strange deaths of cultivators, especially in the periphery of the market, where there are all kinds of people. The cultivators you know may disappear or die for no reason one day. Moreover, like Xuan, the spiritual plant master Zhao had the second cooperation model with Baikao and did not accept the protection of Baikao, so it was difficult for the medicine boy in Baikao to empathize with him and worry about his own safety. Xuan sat for a while, and then manager he came out. Boy Lu, are you here to hand in the Lingyiang grass so soon? That's not the case. I wanted to buy some things at the market. I passed by the hall and came to see you. I plan to sell the remaining Lingyiang grass to the hall after they are all mature. However, next time I may want to get more Lingyiang grass seeds from you. Are 100 Lingyiang grasses not enough for you? If there are more, can you eat them with the meager spiritual power in your body? Xuan smiled without saying a word, brought the teacup in his hand to his mouth, and took a sip. Seeing him like this, the thin old man had a guess in his mind. His spiritual consciousness swept over Lu Xuan's body, and a hint of surprise appeared in his eyes. Have you broken through to the 4th level of key training? Chapter 59, The Mist. I have gained something from practicing these 2 days, and I have entered the ranks of mid-level key training cultivators by chance. Lu Xuan said with a proud smile. You are not bad. The thin old man praised and changed the subject. If you have reached the 4th level of key training, the spiritual power in your body can still meet the needs of planting more firefly grass. I will help you to mention it, so that you can get more firefly grass or other spiritual plant seeds. Thank you, Mr. He. Lu Xuan smiled and expressed his gratitude to the thin old man. That is based on your own ability. If you don't have the ability to cultivate high quality spiritual plants, if your cultivation level is not mid-level key training, I can't do anything about it. However, your growth is indeed a bit beyond my expectations. I remember that, when you first came to Baikao, you were just a casual cultivator at the 2nd level of key training. After breaking through to the 3rd level of key training, your talent in cultivating spiritual plants was also revealed. Now you have become a mid-level key training cultivator. Manager he didn't know what he was thinking of, and his expression became serious. Your cultivation level has broken through so quickly, which shows that you have a good talent in cultivation. Moreover, with your current mid-level key training level, you have the confidence to venture into those low-level secret realms, and your safety can be largely guaranteed. In that case, maybe you might get some opportunity and soar to the sky. So, do you want to continue to be a spiritual plant master, or do you want to not waste this talent, work hard at cultivation, and fight for opportunities? Lu Xuan smiled bitterly. Manager he, I still have self-awareness. Being able to quickly break through to the 4th level of key training does not mean that I have a good talent for cultivation. I'm just taking shortcuts in order to make the spiritual power in my body more abundant and to be able to perform more techniques to cultivate spiritual plants. I used all the spirit stones I got from selling spiritual plants to buy 1st grade elixirs that can speed up cultivation. It took me taking them continuously for a long time before I was able to break through to the 4th level of key training. The higher you go, the weaker the effect of 1st grade elixirs, and the speed of your cultivation will slow down in the future. Moreover, I only have spiritual power in my body. I'm not proficient in techniques, and I don't have any powerful magic weapons. I have no means to compete with others for opportunities in the secret realm. The white light ball involved too many things to explain, so even though he trusted Manager He very much, he did not tell him his true strength. That's a pity. I thought that, since you are so young, you can't see the end of your future at a glance, so it's not bad to go out and see the world. Now it seems that it is a good choice to cultivate spiritual plants honestly and live a stable life. Hearing this, Manager He sighed and felt sorry for Lu Xuan. Lu Xuan remembered the old man's concern for him in his heart and sat for a while before saying goodbye and leaving. On the streets of Fangxi, there are rows of buildings on both sides, and all kinds of shops are available, which is very lively. Lu Xuan came to one of the tallest buildings. The building is 4 stories high and is built with towering spiritual wood. The roof is covered with green glazed tiles, and in the middle are 3 large characters written in a dragon-like and phoenix-like style. Wanbao Tower. This is the most famous store in Fangxi. It has all kinds of cultivation treasures. As long as you have enough spiritual stones, you can buy even what a foundation building cultivator needs. Lu Xuan followed the cultivator in front into the building. There were 20 to 30 cultivators in the hall, and the counters were full of magic tools, talismans, elixirs, etc., which made people dizzy. Seeing Lu Xuan come in and look around, a pretty girl came to greet him. Hello, fellow Taoist, you have not been to Wanbao Tower many times? If you need anything, please tell me, and I will take you to have a look. Okay, thank you for your help. Take me to the counter of formations. Lu Xuan nodded. It was indeed his first time to enter Wanbao Tower. When he was still a small casual cultivator at the 2nd level of key training, he was embarrassed and never thought of entering Wanbao Tower to buy things. Later, a magical white light ball appeared in the spiritual field, and his wealth was also ups and downs. The most in-demand spiritual seeds were also supplied by Baikao. there would be no unknown spiritual seeds in Wanbao Tower. Therefore, until now, I wanted to buy a better protective formation, so I entered Wanbao Tower. Daoiao. This is the formation counter in the lobby on the first floor. There are dozens of formations with different functions, including attack formations, maze formations, concealment formations, defense formations, etc. The pretty girl took Lu Xuan to a relatively remote location with an eager smile. Introduce me a few defense formations. Lu Xuan said. Defense formations. Daoiao. Do you need first grade or second grade ones? Second grade. First grade formations are good for low level key training cultivators, but if they encounter mid level key training cultivators, they are just average. If the cultivator has formation breaking talismans, magic tools, etc. in his hands, it will be even more vulnerable. Okay. The pretty girl smiled even more. For cultivators, the demand for formations is not very large. If she can sell a second grade formation, she can get a considerable commission. This is a stone formation, known for its defense. If a cultivator invades, you can control the boulders in the formation to attack the enemy. This is a wooden cage formation, which needs to be set up in an environment with special spiritual woods. It can trap and block the cultivators who enter the formation. This is a mist hidden maze formation. Its defense is pretty good among the second grade formations. In addition, there is a maze formation. After the cultivator enters, his spiritual consciousness will be affected by the mist in the formation, and it is easy to be trapped inside. This is. The pretty girl pointed to the formation plates and flags in the counter, and introduced them to Lu Xuan in detail. The stone formation has a certain attack capability, but it requires a cultivator behind it to actively control it. The wooden cage formation has higher requirements for the environment, and is not suitable for being set up outside the yard. Lu Xuan weighed it, and pointed to one of the foggy formation plates and asked, how much does this mist hidden maze cost? 165 spiritual stones. How about 130 spiritual stones? Lu Xuan knew that this price was already quite affordable, but his long-standing character made him habitually cut a large chunk. The pretty girl smiled and shook her head, indicating her refusal. In the end, Lu Xuan had to talk his mouth off before he finally managed to chop off 10 spirit stones and bought the mist hidden array for 155 spirit stones. Fortunately, the masked monk sent over 80 spirit stones in time, otherwise my wealth would have shrunk by more than half. Lu Xuan glanced at the nearly 200 spirit stones left in the storage bag, and was even more grateful to the masked monk, who had already merged with the spirit soil. By the way, do you have any blood of snakes or dragon-like monsters here? It's best if it's fresh. After paying the spirit stones, Lu Xuan asked the pretty girl. As for monster blood, usually only those monsters with strange existences in their blood. The materials that can be sold from snake monsters are basically snakeskin, scales, snake venom, etc. I don't remember any snake monster blood. The pretty girl thought about it and looked apologetic. Wait a moment, fellow Daoist. If you are in urgent need, you can reserve some spirit stones from Wanbao Tower. The tower can mobilize resources from other cities and markets to see if we can find what you need. However, the spirit stones you pay will be 10% to 20% higher than if you buy them directly. If the agreed time limit is not met, all the spirit stones will be returned to you, fellow Daoist. Seeing that Lu Xuan was about to leave, the pretty girl stopped him and made a suggestion for Lu Xuan to choose. Chapter 60, Alienated Gnawing Insect. Wanbao had a very good reputation in the market. Lu Xuan listened to the advice of the pretty girl, paid 3 spirit stones as a deposit, and left his identity information. According to the girl, snake monster blood would be transported from other branches of Wanbao in about 5 to 10 days, but Lu Xuan could come to pick it up on his own, and make up the remaining spirit stones according to the quality of the monster blood transported. Then, he returned to the yard with the mist hidden mystery array plate. When he came back, the grass puppet was still in the corner of the spiritual field. The grey grass tumor on the huge head extended several grey and black dry grass, slowly and carefully weaving its limbs. In such a short half day, it only wove 2 arms, and the elbows were not even visible. Sensing Lu Xuan's breath, The grey grass weaving action paused slightly, retracted into the tumor on the head, and turned its head slightly, as if to welcome Lu Xuan. Lu Xuan returned to the house, and took out the mist-hidden mystery array plate. The array plate was greyish-white, with many mysterious and obscure runes drawn on it. Faint mist seeped out from both sides of the runes, lingering above the array plate for a long time. The second grade defensive array also has a little maze function. Even for a high level cultivator, it is not easy to break the array. The array outside the yard was left by the arsenal before. It was considered an invisible benefit of Lu Xuan's huge investment in renting the spiritual field. The grade was first grade, and the defense was only ordinary. Now that it has been replaced with a second grade mist-hidden maze, Lu Xuan is more at ease, and he doesn't have to worry about the spiritual plants in the spiritual field being coveted by others. His spiritual power seeped into the array plate and slowly activated the array plate according to a certain pattern. Many runes on the array plate lit up, and the faint mist in the sky seemed to be blown by the breeze and dispersed in all directions. Then, a translucent spiritual shield appeared outside the yard. Lu Xuan kept adjusting it so that the shield covered the entire yard just right. At the same time, a light mist emerged from nowhere and soon enveloped the entire yard. If you look at the spiritual field from above, you can only see a thick white fog. You can't see either the spiritual plants or the house clearly. Even if your spiritual consciousness penetrates, you will only be trapped in the thick fog. Lu Xuan's spiritual consciousness constantly adjusts the rune pattern, and the fog outside also moves and gathers, as if an invisible hand is controlling it. Okay, the second grade formation is arranged. As for the first grade formation of the dental shop, I will find time to return it to them one day. Lu Xuan stood in the spiritual field and looked outside the yard. Under his control, the spiritual field was not affected by the fog at all. After arranging the formation, Lu Xuan rested for a while and began to check the status of the spiritual plants in the spiritual field. His mind was focused on the spiritual plants, and he quickly learned the current status of the spiritual plants. When he encountered a need, he would use a spiritual rain technique and a wood growth technique to meet every subtle need of the spiritual plants. The rhizome feels a bit heavy, not like the heaviness of adding roots to roots, as if something is sucking the roots hard. When passing the blood jade ginseng area, Lu Xuan suddenly noticed that there was something wrong with the blood jade ginseng. It was clearly keeping a safe distance from other blood jade ginsengs, but it showed an abnormal state. According to the current state of the blood jade ginseng, he slowly extended his spiritual consciousness and penetrated into the spiritual soil. Under the perception of spiritual consciousness, Lu Xuan found that there was a light black thing attached to the rhizome of the blood jade ginseng buried deep in the spiritual soil. It seemed that there was a tumor on the rhizome of the blood jade ginseng. After careful perception, it can be detected that the light black tumor is composed of hundreds of tiny insects. Many insects are buried deep in the soil, motionless, absorbing the vitality of the blood jade ginseng. If they had not found that the current state was a bit abnormal, I'm afraid that they would only be able to detect it after they penetrated deep into the rhizome of the blood jade ginseng. From the looks of it, it should be an annoying spirit insect. I just don't know when it sneaked into the spiritual field to harm my spiritual plants. Lu Xuan's expression relaxed. The book Common Harmful Demonic Insects and Solutions at Home recorded this kind of strange insect. It moves in the soil and likes to bite and devour the roots and stems of spiritual plants. In the early stage of biting, it is generally difficult to find their traces. The way the gnawing spirit insect entered the spiritual field is unknown. After all, the previous formation was only of the first grade, with limited protection, and it was not open all day. The gnawing spirit insect itself is very small and extremely difficult to completely block. In addition, it moves in the soil, making it even more difficult to prevent. Of course, it is also possible that there are gnawing spirit insect eggs left deep in the soil. After hatching, they will find the roots and stems of the blood jade ginseng. Although Lu Xuan cleaned the insect eggs in the spiritual field from time to time before, it was difficult to ensure that they were completely cleaned. He circulated his spiritual power and performed the earth attracting technique. Although the earth attracting technique experience packs that burst out from the white light ball were not as many as the Zhengjin sword art, Lu Xuan's mastery of this technique has also reached the small success level. Under his exquisite control, the spiritual soil moved quietly, without disturbing the gnawing spirit insects attached to the rhizomes of the blood jade ginseng. They waited until the rhizomes were exposed to the light before they reacted. The light black tumor instantly split into hundreds of tiny black insects, like a black fog, making sharp chirping sounds, and attacking Lu Xuan from all directions. Lu Xuan swung his left hand, and a thin red needle turned into a phantom, and stabbed the gnawing spirit insects, flying freely in the insect swarm, leaving a series of red line phantoms. After a few moments, the red line needle flew back in front of Lu Xuan, from the needle tip all the way down, piercing hundreds of tiny gnawing spirit insects. There is something wrong with these gnawing spirit insects. They are very different from what is recorded in the book. I remember that it was recorded that they are not very aggressive, but these in the spiritual field can turn into a ball of black mist and attack in groups, which is obviously different from normal gnawing spirit insects. Lu Xuan looked at the red needle in his hand. With a move of spiritual power, a deep red flame appeared on the slender red needle, and the many tiny gnawing spirit insects that were pierced were instantly burned into black ash. According to their ability, they should not be the gnawing spirit insect eggs left in the spiritual soil before. Otherwise, I would have discovered that they wanted to harm the spiritual plants. Then it can only be an invasion from the outside world. I just don't know what influence it has caused such a big change. Thinking of the alienated monks that have been appearing in the market recently, Lu Xuan felt that something was wrong. What kind of evil spirit did the Xuan family cause in that new secret realm, and what did they get from it, making the whole market unsafe? Lu Xuan immediately thought of the scene when the Xuan family cultivators came back with many independent cultivators last time. He heard the cultivators next to him discussing that they seemed to have stolen some treasures in the process of cultivating the new secret realm, which attracted the evil spirits inside, making the market uneasy for a long time. I hope I'm just overthinking. Lu Xuan felt heavy in his heart and carefully searched every spiritual plant in the spiritual field. Fortunately, he did not find any traces of the alienated gnawing insects. In such a dangerous cultivation world, Lu Xuan just wanted to plant spiritual plants quietly, but this small request was difficult to achieve. He looked at the second grade sword grass and dark marrow Ganoderma that had been planted in the spiritual field for nearly half a year, and he was more eager to hope that they would mature soon. Chapter 61. Snake Catcher. 3 mature pine nuts of the first grade red cloud pine yielded the second grade Lihuo sword, the basic talisman collection and the second grade red thread needle. The sword grass and the dark marrow are both second grade, and they are not as common as the red cloud pine. The light balls they yield when they mature will definitely not disappoint me, Lu Xuan thought to himself. In the next 2 or 3 days, he opened the mist hidden maze and carefully observed the real-time status of many spiritual plants every day to ensure that there were no invasions by alienated gnawing insects. The remaining 26 spiritual fireflies all matured in these few days. Among them, 9 were of good quality, 13 were of superior quality, and the remaining 4 were of perfect quality. After the spiritual fireflies were picked, 26 white light balls appeared. 6 of them were cultivation rewards, 3 in June, 2 in September, and 1 in a year, bringing Lu Xuan a total of 4 years of cultivation. The spiritual energy in his meridians and Anshan was like a raging storm, surging and impacting, and it took a long time to slowly calm down. The 4 years of cultivation added out of thin air made Lu Xuan's strength advance a big step forward, and he was not far from the 7th level of key training. There were also 12 white light balls bringing 12 first grade talismans, mainly sword key talismans and exorcism talismans, mixed with 2 or 3 other talismans such as explosive flame talismans. The first grade talismans accumulated in the storage bag were increasing. If they were used at once, Lu Xuan guessed that they were not weaker than the full strength attack of a high level key training cultivator. In addition, there were 4 first grade PON pills and 2 magic experience packs, namely the earth drawing technique and the wood growing technique. Lu Xuan absorbed them, and his understanding of the 2 magics improved. The remaining 2 white light balls, one opened a first grade PON pill recipe, and the other opened a drop of grass spirit essence liquid. Lu Xuan stuffed it into the grass tumor on the grass puppet's head. Celebrate your recovery. Next, you still have to take good care of the spiritual field. After a while, the grey tumor on the grass puppet's head quickly turned green, and a new round of patrolling the spiritual field began. With the power provided by the grass spirit essence, Xuan felt that its steps were more powerful. A few days later, the snake monster blood that had been ordered in Wanbao Tower arrived as scheduled. Xuan spent another 4 spirit stones, plus the 3 spirit stones deposit he had paid before, and got a bottle of snake blood from Wanbao Tower. According to the beautiful girl, this bottle of snake blood had just been produced, and was still fresh. The blood inside came from a monster called the double-winged golden scaled snake, which was of the 1st grade. The blood was contained in a transparent jade bottle, and the bright red blood was sparkling with golden light, as if the setting sun was reflected in a sea of blood. Xuan took out the transparent jade bottle, and came to the Jiao vine. He opened the bottle stopper, and poured the golden blood inside onto the vine. Suddenly, the vine seemed to come alive in an instant, twisting gently like a snake, and the golden blood slowly seeped into the vine. After absorbing all the blood, Xuan found that there were golden lines on the surface of the vine, forming strange patterns on the dark Jiao vine. Xuan's mind was focused on the Jiao vine. I've waited for so long, and finally today, I finally got to taste more delicious and stronger snake blood. The Jiao vine with golden lines was still swimming slowly, as if it was still immersed in the joy of absorbing the blood of the double-winged golden scaled snake. About half an hour later, the golden lines on the surface of the Jiao vine slowly disappeared, and it became a winding dry vine again. Last time, after absorbing the blood of the black-lined snake of the non-grade level, I remember that the Jiao vine did not change at all. This time, after absorbing the blood of the double-winged golden scaled snake of the 1st grade, this kind of golden lines appeared. Will the improvement of the snake blood quality also affect the different growth states of the Jiao vine? Xuan paid a little attention to see if he could get a large amount of this snake blood from the Wanbao building. If possible, the Jiao vine might grow faster if it was irrigated with the blood of the same monster type for a long time. He inspected all the spiritual plants in the spiritual field, used magic to meet the subtle needs of the spiritual plants, asked the cloud stepping lynx and the grass puppet to take good care of the house, opened the mist hidden array, and then left the yard with a total of 39 spiritual fireflies. All 100 spiritual fireflies were mature, and he planned to go to the herb hall to get some more spiritual firefly seeds, and start a new round of planting. Although the value of the spiritual firefly grass and the rewards brought by the light ball are nothing compared to other 1st and 2nd grade spiritual plants. But so far, he has only found that the spiritual firefly grass has a cultivation reward, so he still has to plant a certain amount to ensure that the cultivation can be improved. The spiritual firefly grass is in quantity, the blood jade ginseng, king Mio spiritual tea and other products are balanced in quality and quantity, and the sword grass, dark marrow ganoderma, and phantom smoke fruit obtained from unknown spiritual seeds are of good quality. 3-pronged approach. Quality and quantity are achieved. As soon as he went out, Xuan saw the monk named Wu not far from the next door. He also saw Xuan and greeted him immediately. Dao Lu, where have you been? Come and try my newly brewed spiritual wine. Xuan couldn't refuse his kindness, so he went to the home of the cultivator surnamed Wu. Dao Lu, come and try my spiritual wine. As soon as he sat down, the cultivator surnamed Wu came over with a pot of deep yellow spiritual wine, and poured a glass for himself and Xuan respectively. I saw a 2nd grade defensive formation appeared outside Dao Lu's yard in the past few days. Dao is really willing to spend money. Xuan took the spiritual wine from his hand, and took a sip. The taste was mellow and long. Good wine. He praised and put down the wine glass. Dao must know that the market is getting more and more dangerous now. There have been alienated cultivators appearing all the time. Before, they even infiltrated Wang Shan, the patrol officer of the market next door. Plus, I encountered a scene of cultivators invading the spiritual field a long time ago, and the spiritual plants in the spiritual field carry all my wealth, so I had to shed blood to protect this family property. Xuan casually perfunctorily passed it over. The cultivator surnamed Wu nodded. That's true. It's always better to be careful. Come on, let's continue drinking. This spiritual wine is brewed from snake bones and gallbladders of snake monsters. It's hard to drink it on weekdays. Really? Xuan picked up the wine glass and suddenly paused. Spiritual wine brewed from snake bones and snake gallbladders. Doesn't that require a large number of snake monsters? Where do those snake bones and snake gallbladders come from? Thinking of this, Xuan directly asked the cultivator surnamed Wu. Fellow Daoist Wu, I have something to ask you. Where do the snake bones and snake gallbladders you brew come from? Is it from Wanbao Tower or other stores, or the market for casual cultivators? None of them. The cultivator surnamed Wu shook his head. It's hard to collect a certain amount of the same species of snake monsters in the market for casual cultivators. The ones in Wanbao Tower are a bit more expensive, so it's not worth it. I got all this from a good friend. Friend? Xuan's eyes lit up. Yes, a friend I have known for many years. His family has a secret technique that is passed down, and he has extraordinary abilities in discovering and capturing snake monsters. He is now at the 6th level of key training. With the secret technique, he can even hunt down 2nd grade snake monsters. Can you introduce him to me, Lu? I urgently need some material from snake monsters. Sure. The cultivator named Wu answered directly. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62, Order of Green Water Python Blood. Without further delay, Brother Wu, why don't you take me to your friend's house? Xuan put down the wine glass in his hand and looked at the monk surnamed Wu expectantly. I don't know if he is at home now, but Brother Lu is so anxious. It must be something important, so I will take you there. Seeing Xuan like this, the monk surnamed Wu had more free time, so he took Xuan out and went to the snake catching monk's house. After walking for about 2 minutes, the two came to a dark blue stone house. The stone house was quite spacious, but when approaching, a sense of coldness could be felt. Xuan followed the monk surnamed Wu into the stone house, and his skin was stimulated by the cold breath, and he couldn't help but have dense goosebumps. As soon as he entered, a green python came out and stopped not far from the two of them, hissing and spitting out its snake tongue. Xiaolu, come back, it's Uncle Wu. A slightly childish voice came from the stone house, and then the voice turned into a hissing whisper. The green python in front of Xuan and the others turned into a green light and returned the same way. A 13 or 14-year-old boy walked out, and the python instantly got into the boy's sleeve. Although the python was huge, it was impossible to tell from the outside that there was another python hidden in the boy's thin body, as if the two were integrated into one. Xuan could see the boy's appearance clearly. He was thin and pale, his eyes narrowed into 2 thin slits, and his lips were very thin. When he grinned at the monk surnamed Wu, his slightly sharp teeth were exposed. Uncle Wu, my father is out, and my grandfather and I are the only ones at home. I know, I came here today for something else. The monk surnamed Wu introduced Xuan and the boy, and Xuan learned that the boy's name was Yuji. The three of them lived together, and his father was away for many years, hunting snakes and monsters for a living. Grandpa is raising little snakes in the backyard. The young Yuji looked at Xuan curiously, walked into the backyard very sensibly, and called out his grandfather. Uncle Yutong, this is my neighbor, a spiritual plant master named Xuan. Dao Iaolu, this old man is my good friend's father, Senior Yutong. Xuan bowed and greeted. The two followed the old man into the house and sat down. The young Yuji came in with 3 cups of hot tea, and then sat obediently in the corner, without saying a word, and looked at Xuan curiously from time to time. The eyes made Xuan feel very strange, as if he was stared at by a poisonous snake, but he did not feel any malice, only pure curiosity. Seeing Xuan looking back at him, he lowered his head shyly. Uncle Yutong, is Senior Yu out? Yes, he went to the wilderness. When he comes back, remember to come and get fresh snake bones and snake gallbladders. The old man said slowly. Don't worry about that. This time, it's my neighbor monk who came here to ask uncle something. The monk surnamed Wu stated his purpose. I heard that you uncles have been catching snakes for generations and have unique secrets in hunting snake monsters. I want to ask, how do you usually deal with the blood of the snake monsters you kill? Snake monster blood. This use is not very common. Only when you encounter a cultivator with special needs, or the blood of the snake monster you kill has a certain value. Will you bring the snake blood back? Xuan nodded. The old man continued. Because the blood needs to be kept as fresh as possible and cannot be stored for a long time, the number of times it is brought back is not many. Generally, it is used as a material for alchemists to refine some special elixirs, or occasionally there will be cultivators who need the blood of snake monsters to practice their skills. What is the grade of the snake monsters you hunt? Can you guarantee the number of hunts for a long time? Mostly are non-grade and first grade snake monsters, and there are also second grade snake monsters. As for the number, you don't have to worry about it. We have mastered several snake monster habitats in the wilderness. They are rarely visited by people and there are many snakes and beasts. Xuan nodded and felt relieved. It's like this. I need a long-term and quantitative supply of snake blood. It's best to be of the first grade or above, and the second grade is better. As for the third grade, there's no need to think about it. The third grade snake monster is equivalent to a foundation building cultivator. Even if he finds one in the wilderness, the snake catcher of the 6th level of key training will only end up with a meal. Second grade snake monster, let me think about it. There is a green water python with red blood. It can be used to refine some kind of detoxification pill. What do you think? Yutong thought for a while and said to Xuan. As long as it can be provided for a long time, there will be no problem. The Gyro vine will produce abnormalities after being watered with snake blood. Xuan estimated that if a certain type of snake blood with special properties is used for long-term cultivation, in addition to promoting the rapid growth of the Gyro vine, it may bring unexpected changes. It's still possible to provide it for a long time, but the quantity will not be particularly large. After all, there are not many second grade green water pythons, and it is also difficult to deal with them. I wonder how much it costs? Xuan asked curiously. 10 spirit stones per pound. What do you think? The old man asked tentatively. Xuan almost couldn't control his expression. The small bottle of double-winged golden scaled snake blood he got from Xuan Bao a while ago cost him 7 spirit stones. Although the price was slightly higher, because it was a pre-order, it was obvious which one was more cost-effective. 7 spirit stones for a bottle of less than 1 pound of first grade snake blood or 10 spirit stones for 1 pound of second grade snake demon blood. The middlemen are still making a lot of money. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. The value of the snake blood material itself was very low, but after being handled by Xuan Bao Lao, the price had risen by who knows how much. Buying raw materials directly from the producer Yu family would save a lot of spirit stones compared to buying from other channels. What's more, the second grade snake blood could be provided to him steadily, which made Xuan, who loved bargaining, generous for a rare time. Okay. He nodded in agreement. Yutong and the young man Yuji beside him couldn't help but smile with satisfaction. In the past, when hunting snake monsters, if there was no specific request from the cultivators, the snake blood brought back generally could not be sold at a good price, and often fell into a situation of unsellable sales, and finally had to be dumped. Only the first or second grade could be sold for some money. The second grade green water python blood was 10 spirit stones per pound, which was much more profitable than before. The little risk brought by hunting the second grade snake monster was nothing compared to the benefits of spirit stones. In addition, the second grade green water python itself has precious snake skin, snake bones, snake gallbladder, snake venom. The old Yutong wanted to return to the peak and experience the feeling of hunting the second grade snake monster again. The two parties signed a simple contract. The Yu family did not have the second grade green water python blood now. Xuan left 5 spirit stones as a deposit, and when Yuji's father came back, he would deliver the green water python blood and pay the remaining spirit stones. Before leaving, the old man Yutong also took out a non-grade demon snake from the inner courtyard, killed it and took it immediately, filled a bottle with snake blood, and insisted that Xuan take it back. Xuan tried to refuse it in every possible way, but he couldn't refuse it anymore, and had to accept the bottle of snake blood. Chapter 63 Diseased Spiritual Plant. After the two came out of Yu's house, Lu Xuan and the monk surnamed Wu parted ways and went to Beikeotang. In Beikeotang, the rich aroma of medicine filled every corner. As soon as you entered, you felt a refreshing feeling. Lu boy, you finally showed up. I've been looking for you for a long time. Manager he grabbed Lu Xuan's arm and said hurriedly, I just sent a medicine boy to your house, but I couldn't find you. Fortunately, you came here by yourself now. Old he, is there anything wrong? Lu Xuan's expression was condensed. He knew that the old man would not send people to his house to look for him unless there was something urgent. Has there been any abnormality in your spiritual field recently? The thin old man looked around and asked softly when he saw that no one noticed this side. When I was taking care of the spiritual plants a few days ago, I found some gnawing spiritual insects. They were quite different from what was recorded in the books. I wonder if there was a change. Lu Xuan told the truth. That's it. Not only your spiritual field, but also other spiritual planters in Beikeo Hall, and even the spiritual fields in the entire market have this situation. Some people speculate that there are too many evil spirits coming in from the market, which are too strong, and have unknowingly polluted the spiritual veins of the market, making the spiritual energy turbid, and causing the alien insects to mutate. In order to reduce losses, the alchemists in the hall decided to summon all the spiritual planters who cooperated with Beikeo Hall to discuss solutions. The thin old man's words made Lu Xuan look solemn. Don't worry, this is a major event that concerns all spiritual planters and even all cultivators in the market. They will not leave it alone. You just need to follow their actions. Manager he saw that Lu Xuan's face was so heavy and comforted him. When will the small meeting be held? It will take a while. You wait here first. Lu Xuan nodded, and when his mood calmed down, he handed the 39 mature spiritual fireflies in his hand to the thin old man. The price was still the same: good quality for 3 spirit stones and 50 broken spirits, top quality for each plant plus 20 broken spirits, and perfect quality for 4 spirit stones. 14 plants of good quality, 19 plants of top quality, and 6 plants of perfect quality, a total of 143 spirit stones and 30 broken spirits for Lu Xuan. Lu Xuan's wealth returned to more than 300. He watched more and more spiritual plant masters enter the inner room, so he followed them in. In the spacious hall, there were a dozen or so spiritual plant masters who had cooperative relations with Beikeotang. Lu Xuan didn't know most of them, and only a few of them had dealt with them. Lu Xuan's entry attracted the attention of some monks, because he was too young. To become a good spiritual plant master, you must have rich planting experience. Among the monks present, whether they were spiritual plant masters who specialized in cultivating spiritual plants for Beikeotang or those who had established relatively open cooperative relations, the youngest was over 40 years old. Lu Xuan felt like a crane standing out among chickens sitting in the crowd. There were cultivators inside who had heard of Lu Xuan's reputation. They knew that, although he mainly planted ungraded Lingyian grass and first grade blood jade ginseng for Beikeotang, the plants he planted had a very high rate of superior quality, and there were even spiritual plants of perfect quality. Therefore, cultivators came one after another to make friends and get acquainted. After a while, all the spiritual plant masters arrived, and a long-bearded cultivator in a green shirt came over. He glanced at all the spiritual plant masters present, and paused slightly when passing by Lu Xuan. My name is Hizang Wang, an ordinary alchemist from Beikeotang. I'm sure you have heard of him. Whether you are working with the hall full-time or working freely, you are all outstanding spiritual plant masters. I called everyone here because I want to inform everyone of a major event that involves the interests of all spiritual plant masters. Seeing that all the spiritual plant masters' attention was attracted by him, the long-bearded cultivator nodded and continued. Come in. You may have heard or witnessed unknown changes in the spiritual plants you planted. As the number of alienated monks increases, the evil spirits that sneak into the market become more and more arrogant, and the spiritual fields are slowly undergoing adverse changes. The alien insects that sneak into the spiritual fields have become more aggressive and destructive, and some spiritual plants have inexplicable diseases, such as these two. The long-bearded monk took out 2 abnormal spiritual plants from his robe. One was a blood jade ginseng that Lu Xuan had planted before. On the ginseng body, gray and white areas appeared in the crystal clear position, as if countless fine gravel had accumulated. The long-bearded monk gently touched a gray and white area, and suddenly, the gray and white area of the blood jade ginseng in his hand cracked silently, turning into fine sand and scattering on the ground. The other spiritual plant Lu Xuan had never seen before, and the main body of the spiritual plant was a blood-colored leaf. At this moment, there were pieces of black fluff growing on the leaf, and countless fluffs were squeezed together and gently floating, like pieces of mold growing. These are the two spiritual plants that have developed diseases. The cause is unknown, but the diseased parts have caused irreversible damage to the spiritual plants. Moreover, the diseases may be contagious. If they are transmitted to each other, all the spiritual plants in the spiritual field will suffer a devastating disaster. The bearded monk said solemnly. In order to avoid affecting the spiritual plants you cultivate, and thus affecting the alchemy of Baikao Tang, I would like to make 2 suggestions here. First, be careful and strengthen your awareness of prevention, and at the same time, strengthen your protective measures. You can set up a defensive formation to keep the alienated monster insects out of the spiritual field, or you can use corresponding magic to monitor the growth of the spiritual plants. It is best to observe them several times a day, to try to avoid alienation and pollution of the spiritual plants. Second, work together to come up with a solution to the diseased spiritual plants. You all have unique characteristics in cultivating spiritual plants, so it must be easier to find ways to prevent or solve the disease. If it is feasible and effective, Baikao Tang will definitely give you generous rewards. The spiritual plant masters present either closed their eyes and meditated, or discussed with each other, and came up with several solutions, but they could only treat the symptoms, and not the root cause, and could not solve the problem from the root. Lu Xuan sat in a corner, his mind wandering, and a strange idea came to his mind. I wonder if I can see the current state of this diseased spiritual plant, after I bring it back, and plant it in my own spiritual field. The more he thought about it, the more he felt it was feasible. He could plant spiritual seeds or seedlings in the spiritual field, and cultivate them little by little to get white light balls, which could give him various rewards. Among them, there are several factors that affect the light ball rewards, including whether Lu Xuan cultivated the spiritual plant throughout its growth, the grade of the spiritual plant itself, and the quality after it matures. If I can bring the diseased spiritual plant back and successfully plant it, it would be great if I can see its current state. By cultivating it to maturity, although I didn't put in much effort during the growth process, the light ball reward may not be there or only be a basic reward, but the spiritual plant itself, that has recovered well is of great value. I must get 1 or 2 diseased spiritual plants, and do experiments in the spiritual field. Lu Xuan thought secretly. Chapter 64 No Hope, Wait for Death. After returning to the hall of Baikao Tang, Lu Xuan came to the steward He. Mr. He, the 100 spiritual firefly grass seeds that we planted last time have all been picked. Please go get me some more. This time, it's 120. Lu Xuan paused and said. Although the spiritual firefly grass is of no rank, its value is much lower than other spiritual plants in the spiritual field, and the white light ball reward it produces is also much smaller, but there is no way. So far, it is the only one that can produce cultivation rewards. Therefore, Lu Xuan not only has to continue planting, but also slightly increase the output. However, due to the limited area of the spiritual field, he needs to consume more spiritual power for fine cultivation, so he can't plant as he pleases. 120 is the maximum number that can be cultivated after the breakthrough of cultivation. The thin old man nodded, walked into the hall, took out 120 slender and dried spiritual seeds, and handed them to Lu Xuan. It is still the cooperative price, which is 20% to 30% cheaper than the normal purchase. 120 spiritual firefly grass seeds cost Lu Xuan 36 spiritual stones. Mr. He, I have something to ask of you. After handing over the spirit stones, Lu Xuan said with a warm smile. I know it's not a good thing to see your shifty look. Tell me. Manager He had long been accustomed to Lu Xuan's routine and said with a sigh. Just now, many spirit plant masters in Baekotang gathered together, and Master Xuan reminded us that our small spiritual plants were invaded and polluted by evil insects, and took out 2 invaded spirit plants. You are one of the leaders of Baekotang. Can you give me the 2 polluted spirit plants? What do you want to do with that thing? It's not a good thing. The thin old man looked serious. I have an immature idea, and I want to take it back to do an experiment to see if I can find out the cause of the invasion and pollution, and the solution. Are you confused? You took 2 diseased spirit plants into your own spirit field. Aren't you afraid that the spirit plants inside will be polluted by them? Manager He's face changed, and he scolded Lu Xuan. Don't worry, Mr. He. Since I want to take them back, I'm sure that I will not let the spiritual plants I plant get contaminated. Lu Xuan knew that the old man was concerned about him, and he replied solemnly. Seeing Lu Xuan like this, Manager He had no choice but to take the 2 diseased spiritual plants from the inner room. Take care of yourself. Be sure to pay attention, and don't let the spiritual plants in the spiritual field be infected. Otherwise, the spiritual plants you have worked so hard to plant at the cost of giving up cultivation may be destroyed overnight and become nothing. I will. Lu Xuan took the 2 diseased spiritual plants, and did not put them into the storage bag. Instead, he wrapped them in a cloth bag and quickly returned to his yard. As soon as he opened the door, a black shadow flashed through the crack of the door. The cloud-stepping lynx stared at the 3 red-bearded carp in the spiritual spring pool motionlessly. Only the 2 tufts of grey-white hair on the pointed ears trembled slightly, sensing Lu Xuan's movements. I'm back. Lu Xuan pretended not to notice its figure waiting behind the door and called out. Upon hearing the voice, the stepping cloud lynx turned its head gracefully, and its pair of green eyes looked at Lu Xuan indifferently, and continued to focus on the red-bearded carp in the spiritual spring pool. Lu Xuan's mind was focused on it, and he felt its inner joy, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. In the distance, the grass puppet with a trace of green still on the grass tumor was still tirelessly patrolling the spiritual field. The 2 new legs that had just been woven were still quite useful, and it was still walking steadily with its huge head. Lu Xuan found a blank area in the corner of the spiritual field, which was a certain distance away from other spiritual plants. At the same time, with a thought, the thick fog that permeated outside the yard slowly moved over and circled the blank area he selected. After being able to grasp the real-time status of the spiritual plants, he was indeed quite confident that the spiritual plants he planted would not be contaminated by diseased spiritual plants, but he still had to be careful. After confirming that the fog completely surrounded the blank area, Lu Xuan took out the 2 diseased spiritual plants, cast the earth attraction technique, and placed them in the cracks of the spiritual soil. Then he controlled the spiritual soil to tightly surround the roots of the 2 spiritual plants. After doing all this, his mind first focused on the blood jade ginseng with the grey-white gravel area. As expected, a thought emerged from Lu Xuan's mind. Inhaling excessive polluted and turbid spiritual power will produce unknown changes. It is necessary to drip the 100-year spiritual milk on the polluted part to restore its vitality. 100-year spiritual milk? Lu Xuan pulled out the diseased blood jade ginseng buried in the spiritual soil. It's hopeless. Wait for death. Are you kidding? You actually need 100-year spiritual milk to save a first-grade blood jade ginseng. Spiritual milk is rare, not to mention a 100-year-old one. Lu Xuan immediately judged the pros and cons without thinking. A golden sword energy circled the diseased blood jade ginseng and cut it into more than 10 small sections. Then, a fireball technique fell on the broken blood jade ginseng, and after a few breaths, it burned to black ash. It seems that my deduction is still feasible. By transplanting the spiritual plants in the growth period into the spiritual field, we can grasp their immediate status. However, since they are not planted and cultivated by ourselves, there is a high possibility that there will be no light ball rewards. Even if there are, it is estimated that nothing good will bloom. However, this is an ability that can be deeply explored. If used well, it can also bring considerable benefits. Lu Xuan thought secretly, focusing his mind on another blood-colored leaf. The root of this spiritual plant is very small, and the blood-colored leaves occupy most of the area. A thought flashed through Lu Xuan's mind. Blood spirit leaf, a first-grade spiritual plant, has alienated black budworm larvae in the leaves. It is necessary to cut and purify the alienated insect silk on the leaves, then remove the alienated larvae inside the leaves, and finally irrigate with spiritual springs. It will take a period of time before it can fully recover to normal. This one can still be saved. Xuan thought in his heart that, although the recovery process of the blood spirit leaf in front of him was more troublesome, even if there was a profit in the end, it would not be much, but Xuan was just using it for experiments, and the focus was on accumulating relevant experience. He used his spiritual power, and a fine golden sword energy, as thick as a hair, cut off the many black hairs on the surface of the leaves. Countless fine hairs fell to the ground, jumping slightly, making a dying struggle. After cleaning off the black hairs, there were still large and small moldy pieces on the leaves, which looked extremely ugly. Xuan controlled the golden sword thread to cut off the moldy parts, and then carefully probed into the inside of the leaves. With the help of the real-time state, the spiritual consciousness controlled the sword energy to pull out a few thin black larvae from inside. As soon as the larvae came out, they turned into black lines and tried to attack Xuan. Before they could get close, Xuan cut them into countless pieces, and a fireball fell, turning them all into black ash. After getting rid of the alienated black budworm, Xuan, out of caution, sacrificed another evil removing talisman, and a faint pure spiritual light swept around the blood spirit leaf, clearing away the possible remaining evil aura. Chapter 65 Immaculate Jade. The pure spiritual light did not cause any abnormal movement, so Xuan was relieved. He scooped a small half bowl of spiritual spring water from the spiritual spring pool and poured it on the severely damaged blood spirit leaf. The blood spirit leaf greedily absorbed the spiritual spring, and the broad leaves drooped lazily, and the tip of the leaf gently touched the surface of the spiritual soil. Finally, the disease problem of this blood spirit leaf has been solved. Xuan returned to the house, his thoughts drifting. This not only means that he can not only solve the problem of invasion and pollution of the spiritual plants he planted with his own hands, but also deal with other diseased spiritual plants, provided that he brings them into his own spiritual field and plants them. Although it is not from the beginning to cultivate spiritual plants, the light ball reward is almost nothing, but if this method is used properly, it can still bring a lot of benefits to oneself. Thinking of this, he suddenly felt happy. After imagining it, he came to the spiritual field with 120 spiritual firefly grass seeds. Planting and cultivating spiritual plants and obtaining white light balls is the right way. Since the 100 spiritual fireflies matured, a large area of the spiritual field has been vacated. Xuan performed the earth attraction technique, and tiny cracks in the spiritual soil were just enough to accommodate the slender and dry spiritual firefly grass seeds. More than 100 spiritual firefly grass seeds were buried and planted. Xuan performed a round of spiritual rain technique, covering the entire area of the spiritual firefly grass seeds. Strands of spiritual rain seeped into the spiritual soil, moistening the slender spiritual seeds. After planting the spiritual firefly grass, Xuan took the opportunity to inspect the spiritual field. The second grade sword grass has grown to a height of 3 feet, standing upright, like a sharp sword pointing to the sky. There are many tiny sword keys swimming around the sword grass, and dents and tiny sword marks can be seen in the spiritual soil below. Xuan casually hit it with a Jengjin sword technique, and the golden sword key swam through the body of the sword grass, leaving a series of shallow golden lines. Under the specially built wooden shed, the dark red mycelium of the second grade dark marrow mushroom planted at the same time almost filled the entire wooden shed. Xuan vaguely saw the dark red viscous liquid flowing from the blood vessel-like channels inside the dark marrow mushroom. The white smoke around the phantom smoke luo fruit was taking up more and more space, almost reaching a length of 150 meters, and the concentration was getting higher and higher, hiding the smoke-like spiritual plant in the depths. The spiritual consciousness was greatly affected by the smoke, and it took Xuan a long time to find it. A spiritual rain technique accurately hit the spiritual plant and nourished it. On the intertwined branches of the 3 King Mio spiritual teas, many thin green buds have grown. Compared with the winding, twisted and powerful old roots, the buds look more isolated and independent. The growth of the 21st grade blood jade ginsengs is also quite good. They have been planted for nearly half a year, and are not far from maturity. As for Xiaoteng, after digesting the bottle of double-winged golden scaled snake blood, it became half dead again, and could only rely on Lu Xuan's spiritual rain technique to barely maintain its vitality. Time passed quickly, and 3 days passed in a blink of an eye. The 120 seeds of Lingyian grass planted broke through the soil one after another and grew tiny buds. The buds were very inconspicuous, and only by careful observation could they be found to be swaying gently in the breeze, looking fragile. However, Lu Xuan felt a kind of uplifting power from their weak bodies, which made people feel a strong vitality and a good mood. After inspecting the spiritual field and confirming that all the spiritual plants were in good condition, Lu Xuan was about to go back to the house when he suddenly heard a knock on the door outside. When he opened the gate, it was the boy named Yuji, holding a white jade bottle in his hand. "Senior Lu, I'm here to give you the green water python blood." The pale boy smiled and said to Lu Xuan when he saw him, revealing a mouthful of sharp teeth, "Thank you for your hard work, come in." Lu Xuan led the boy into the yard. Suddenly, a black shadow fell in front of the boy. The cloud-stepping lynx stared at Yuji's neck with its emerald eyes and slowly circled around. The boy's clothes suddenly swelled, and a large emerald green snake emerged from the gap between his neck and clothes. Its head moved with the movements of the cloud-stepping lynx, and it hissed from time to time. "Stay aside." Lu Xuan initially saw the reaction of the cloud-stepping lynx and thought it had discovered something evil from the boy, but he was relieved when the young lynx did not make the rough roar before. The pale boy Yuji also restrained the emerald green snake hidden in his body. After the two spirit beasts calmed down, Lu Xuan took Yuji into the house and sat down. "Senior Lu, this is a whole bottle of green water python blood. Excluding the weight of the bottle itself, the snake blood is slightly more than 1 pound, but it is still settled according to the price set before." The boy handed the white jade bottle in his hand to Lu Xuan. Lu Xuan took it in his hand and shook it gently to confirm that what the boy said was true. The weight of the snake blood inside was indeed slightly more than 1 pound. "Okay, I got it. Here are the remaining 5 spirit stones. When your father catches another green water python, you will bring the collected snake blood here, and I will give you the spirit stones." Lu Xuan nodded with satisfaction and said to the boy. Yuji took the 5 spirit stones handed over by Lu Xuan, and his already small eyes narrowed into a slit with a smile. He carefully hid the 5 spirit stones in his clothes, bowed to Lu Xuan to thank him, and then said goodbye and left. Lu Xuan opened the bottle stopper, and the red and green mixed demonic liquid inside flowed, and there was a strong and strange fragrance. He carefully poured the red and green liquid on the Jiao vine. Suddenly, the Jiao vine came alive instantly, clinging tightly to the red and green mixed liquid dripping on the vine, greedily absorbing it. After a while, green patterns appeared on the vine, and against the background of the black vine, a kind of enchanting breath was revealed. With the Yu family providing the blue water python blood, Xiaoteng can finally be cultivated in a long-term and stable manner. He came to the red cloud pine, and the last 2 red cloud pine nuts had matured. 2 pine nuts, one of the best quality, and one of the perfect quality. It was also the only one of the 5 red cloud pine nuts that appeared with perfect quality. 2 white light balls appeared at the part where the pine nuts were picked, flickering slightly, and countless slender needles could not hide its existence. Lu Xuan gently picked up the first white light ball, which was the best quality one. Harvest a red cloud pine nut, and get a copy of basic talisman collection. Or thought flashed through his mind, and then he had a better understanding of the material processing and rune drawing of talismans. An experience package, basic talismans, from entry to proficiency. 5 red cloud pine nuts. 2 copies of basic talisman collection appeared, and Lu Xuan's understanding of dozens of basic first grade talismans in his heart was further improved. However, whether it is alchemy or talisman drawing, it is a skill that consumes a lot of spirit stones in the early stage, with a very high failure rate. It is a loss-making business, just to gain more relevant experience. Therefore, Lu Xuan does not plan to draw talismans in a hurry, and will wait until he absorbs a few more experience packs. The second white light ball was also left by the perfect quality red cloud pine nuts, and Lu Xuan was even more looking forward to it. Or thought flashed through his mind, and a transparent jade talisman appeared in his hand. Everything under the transparent jade talisman is clearly visible, as if a layer of filter was added, and wherever it passes, it is clear, bright, and clean. The immaculate jade is a third-grade auxiliary treasure. It can clear the mind and resist the invasion and pollution of evil spirits. Wearing it on the body for a long time will slightly enhance the spiritual awareness of the cultivator. Chapter 66. A merely inferior spiritual plant. A third-grade auxiliary treasure, immaculate jade. Xuan muttered to himself, while holding the transparent jade talisman in his hand. I didn't expect that the light bowl brought by the first-grade red cloud pine would actually produce a third-grade treasure. He was a little surprised. You know, the third-grade and second-grade treasures sound similar, but in fact, they are qualitatively different. Second-grade treasures are still in the key training stage, mainly used by middle and higher-level key training cultivators, while third-grade treasures are already in the foundation building category. I guess perfect quality accounts for a large part of the factor, but the higher the grade of the spiritual plant, the harder it is to obtain a mature spiritual plant of perfect quality. This time, I'm lucky. One of the 5 red cloud pine nuts is of perfect quality. Xuan guessed. Although the third-grade immaculate jade is mainly for auxiliary purposes, it has an extremely rare value. It can guard against and resist the invasion of evil spirits. This function alone can cause countless cultivators to scramble for it. You know, the cultivation world is full of dangers, and the evil spirits invade the cultivators in various strange and silent ways. With this immaculate jade, it can resist the invasion and pollution of even the weird level evil spirits to a certain extent. Not to mention, wearing the immaculate jade for a long time can also increase the spiritual consciousness of the cultivators. In addition to the natural growth of spiritual consciousness when breaking through and being promoted, there are few other ways to improve it. Generally, it is extremely rare special skills, high-grade elixirs, or some natural treasures. Recently, Xuan felt that the undercurrents in the market, which was not very safe, were surging. The cultivators were constantly alienated. Even Wang Shan, the little leader of the law enforcement hall, was poisoned by evil spirits. Recently, contaminated alien insects and spiritual plants have appeared. All signs show that the market is becoming riddled with holes, and more evil cultivators and evil spirits are like leeches, surrounding and sucking blood. The appearance of the immaculate jade can at least allow Xuan to avoid the evil spirits from harming himself and protect himself. As for the rest, it will be left to the big families and forces in the market. For Xuan at present, it is more important to plant spiritual plants. He found a thin red string and tied the transparent jade talisman to his chest. A cool and refreshing feeling came from his chest, which made Xuan stay clear-minded. The invisible and colorless spiritual light on the jade talisman swept across and swept away the turbid aura on his body. After all the 5 red cloud pine nuts produced by the first-grade red cloud pine were picked, the spiritual plant lost its effect. Xuan knew that spiritual plants were generally divided into 3 types. The first type matured once and lost its effect after maturity. This type is more common in low-grade spiritual plants, such as the firefly grass, eclipse moon fruit, and the red cloud pine that were picked before. The second type has a certain growth period. During this period, spiritual fruits and leaves will mature regularly. Among the spiritual plants currently planted, Xuan estimated that the second-grade King Neolingcha belongs to the second type. The last type is the year-type spiritual plant. The longer the age, the stronger the effect of the spiritual plant. This type is generally a high-grade spiritual plant. Of course, there are many kinds of spiritual plants, and Xuan dare not guarantee whether there will be other types of spiritual plants. He put 2 red cloud pine nuts together with the other 3, intending to find an opportunity to sell them. Pine nuts contain rich spiritual power and have a strange and wonderful taste, especially popular among female cultivators. The worst ones in Xuan's hands are of good quality, and he estimates that he can sell them for a good price. In the next few days, in addition to the normal cultivation of spiritual plants, raising red-bearded carp, and stepping cloudlinks, Xuan focused on the Gyo vine and the blood spirit leaf that was gradually returning to normal. The green water python is worthy of being a second-grade monster, and its efficacy is much stronger than the double-winged golden scaled snake blood bought from Wanbao building before. After the red and green blood was poured on the gyro vine, the green patterns gradually disappeared after more than a day. A pound of green water python blood can be used for more than 10 days. Xuan estimated that this was still a bit stressful for Yuji's father. After all, although they had the secret technique of hunting snake monsters, they were only at the 5th level of key training, and it was not easy to hunt a large number of second grade monsters for a long time. Under Xuan's careful care, the blood spirit leaf has recovered almost completely, but there is a skull-like mark on the broad leaf, which looks a bit inconsistent. It was almost mature, so Xuan simply picked it. As expected, no white light ball appeared. The quality of the blood spirit leaf, after picking, was inferior. It was the first time that a spiritual plant of this quality appeared in the spiritual field. Xuan didn't take it seriously. After all, it was good enough to be able to recover it. He didn't spend too much time and effort to cultivate it carefully. The diseased blood spirit leaf was successfully restored. Xuan put it in the storage bag and couldn't wait to come to Baikyo. There are 20 to 30 spiritual plant masters cooperating with Baikyo. They don't have Xuan's ability to grasp the status of spiritual plants at any time. They can only passively defend, so the number of spiritual plants with diseases is naturally more. As soon as he entered Baikyo, Manager He, who was counting the spiritual medicines on the counter, saw Xuan at a glance. "Look kid, is there anything wrong with the spiritual plants in your spiritual field? Thank you for your concern, old man He. Everything is normal. All the spiritual plants in the spiritual field have not shown any signs of invasion and contamination." Hearing the thin old man's concern for him, Xuan couldn't help but feel warm in his heart. It's good that everything is fine. What about the 2 diseased blood jade ginseng and blood spiritual leaves? Have you researched anything? Hearing Xuan's words, Manager He breathed a sigh of relief and asked. Xuan smiled, said nothing, and took out a spiritual plant from the storage bag. "Newly matured spiritual plant, please give an estimate of the price." "This is." The thin old man's eyes narrowed. Although the spiritual plant in front of him looked ugly and of poor quality, he, who was experienced, could tell at first glance that it was a blood spiritual leaf. According to his understanding, the spiritual plants that Xuan cooperated with Baikyo were Lingian grass and blood jade ginseng, so everything was about to be revealed. "Did you really restore that severely diseased blood spirit leaf to normal?" He was shocked. "You know, there is more than one spirit plant master in Baikyo who can cultivate 3rd grade spirit plants, but most of the time they are helpless when facing spirit plants that have been invaded and contaminated. Among them, the 2 spirit plants that were taken out had serious diseases, and after several attempts, there was no improvement. And Xuan, a casual spirit plant master, was able to restore one of them to normal. How could he not be surprised? Ahem. He coughed softly to cover up his expression. "This spirit plant has too many damaged parts, and the spiritual energy contained in it is lower than normal. It's just an inferior spirit plant, so I'll take it for 25 spirit stones." He couldn't bear to see Xuan so proud in front of him, so he pretended to be indifferent and said lightly, "Haha, thank you very much, Mr. He. I was thinking about cooperating with you, but seeing that you look down on inferior spirit plants, I can only forget it." Chapter 67. For the centennial cause of Baikyo. Cooperation? What do you want to cooperate with an old man like me? Manager He handed 25 spirit stones to Xuan and asked curiously. "There are 20 to 30 spirit plant masters in Baikyo, which means there are more diseased spirit plants behind them. These spirit plants have various strange symptoms due to being invaded by alienated monster insects and polluted by turbid spiritual energy. If we can't find the problem, even if we spend more time and energy, we can only watch them become diseased and wither and die. So I have a vague idea. Instead of letting them wait to die quietly, it is better to buy those diseased spirit plants from spirit plant masters at a low price and try to save them. I don't know most of the spirit plant masters who cooperate with Baikyo, so I want Mr. He to help me find those diseased spirit plants at a low price." As the manager of Baikyo, the thin old man is responsible for purchasing and counting various spiritual medicines and plants. Whether they are full-time employed spirit plant masters or free cooperation, they have close ties. Not to mention, the old man himself is very kind to Xuan, so he wants to take this opportunity to repay him. Purchase diseased spiritual plants? I really don't know what you are thinking. You actually did such a ridiculous thing. Manager, he frowned. Other spiritual plant masters were very secretive about diseased spiritual plants, and they didn't even have time to hide, but Xuan wanted to take the initiative to approach them, which made him puzzled. Are you sure you can control and cure those diseased spiritual plants? Aren't you worried that your own spiritual plants will be implicated and the purchase will lose money? The spiritual plants I grow myself will definitely be separated from those diseased spiritual plants and will not be affected. As for purchasing spiritual plants at a low price, I would like to get them for free, but it is probably difficult to do so. After all, spiritual plant masters have spent so much time and energy to cultivate spiritual plants. Even if they are diseased, they still have a chance of luck and are unlikely to abandon them and give them to others. If I treat diseased spiritual plants, of course I can't guarantee a 100% success rate. There is only a certain possibility, but I should still make money. Xuan said. It's easy to help you make connections and contact those spiritual plant masters. Most of them probably want to get rid of those diseased spiritual plants. If someone buys them at a low price, they will naturally be willing to cut their losses. But what is your standard for a low price? How much is my reward? Manager, he was obviously a little interested. He looked around and pulled Xuan to a corner. As for the purchase standard, it is about 10% of the value of mature spiritual plant. There is a certain floating space depending on the degree of disease and growth status. As for your reward, just calculate it according to the quantity. 1 spiritual stone for each first grade spiritual plant and 4 spiritual stones for each second grade spiritual plant. What do you think? Xuan's main purchase targets are first grade or second grade diseased spiritual plants. It is estimated that there are only a few people who grow third grade spiritual plants in the entire Baikotang, and the number is very small. As for the non-grade spiritual plants, their own value is extremely low, and there is no light group reward. Just relying on the recovered spiritual plants, you can't earn many spiritual stones, so they are not within his consideration. 1 spiritual stone or 4 spiritual stones per plant. Manager, he lowered his head and pondered. Then I won't be polite to you, kid. I promise to contact and persuade every spiritual plant master in Baikotang. It's not for those few spiritual stones. I'm just worried about the spiritual plants in their spiritual fields. After all, Baikotang has ownership or priority rights to those spiritual plants. This is related to the century-old cause of Baikotang. We can't afford to be negligent. The thin old man said righteously. Yes. For the century-old cause of Baikotang. Xuan quickly echoed. The two smiled at each other, and everything was self-evident. You sit here for a while, I'll go see if there are any abnormal spiritual plants in the medicine garden of the hall. With the opportunity to easily earn spiritual stones, manager, he became very motivated. Baikotang has several medicine gardens under its name, one of which is not far from Baikotang, and it grows more than 10 kinds of spiritual medicines suitable for refining pills. Xuan and Baikotang are only in a free cooperation relationship, and the medicine garden is of great importance. He can't go in with them, so he can only sit in the hall and wait quietly. The medicine boy who was handling the spiritual medicine nearby was very considerate and diligently brought a cup of steaming spiritual tea and a small dish of spiritual fruit. The spiritual fruit was the size of a fingertip, light purple, and uneven on the surface. It looked ordinary, but tasted extremely sweet and delicious. Xuan threw it into his stomach one by one, and soon he had eaten more than half of it. In a wide medicine garden, the area of the medicine garden was dozens of times larger than the small courtyard owned by Xuan. There was a mountain dozens of feet high in it, and a small river full of spiritual energy lingered at the foot of the mountain. At this time, above the medicine garden, a white spiritual energy shield covered the entire garden, and spiritual energy flashed on the surface of the shield from time to time. The thin old man took out a wooden sign with strange runes drawn on it, and the spiritual energy on the shield immediately gathered over. Sensing the breath on the wooden sign, a crack that could allow one person to pass through quickly appeared. Manager, he took advantage of the crack before it closed and entered the medicine garden sideways. He looked around and quickly locked onto a spiritual field not far away. 3 spiritual plant masters gathered around the spiritual field, discussing something fiercely, and all 3 of them had sad faces. How is the situation these 2 days? Have you found any new diseased spiritual plants? Manager he walked up to the 3 people and asked. Under the full protection of the 2nd grade top level formation, no new diseased spiritual plants have been found for the time being. However, this is not a solution. The 2nd grade formation is maintained day and night to protect such a large area of the medicine garden. The cost of spiritual stones is not a small amount. A slightly fat spiritual plant master walked out and said, "How are the diseased spiritual plants found before now? Have you found a solution?" Manager he nodded and looked at the 3 people and said, "All those diseased spiritual plants have been isolated, but the degree of disease is getting worse and worse, and there is no way to find out the principle of their disease. It's just a blind cat meeting a dead mouse, completely relying on luck. That's unavoidable. In the past, the market had the protection of foundation building monks and 3rd grade formations, so similar situations would never happen, so it was difficult to react for a while. In addition, the way the evil spirits invaded was strange and unpredictable, and it was hard to prevent. It was already very good to be able to guard well." The 3 spiritual plant masters heard this and looked deeply sympathetic. "I have a good friend who is also a spiritual plant master. You may know him. In order to find a way to eliminate the diseased spiritual plants, he wants to buy some spiritual plants that have been invaded and contaminated at a low price. What do you think?" The 3 people's eyes lit up, and their minds became active immediately. The only reason why they were reluctant to part with those diseased spiritual plants was that they didn't want to waste their previous efforts. Now they heard that someone wanted to buy the diseased spiritual plants. Even if the price was not high, it would be a new choice. Chapter 68 Big Profit. Here, these are the diseased spiritual plants I just got for you from the nearby medicinal garden. There are 10 in total. In the hall of Bakeo Hall, Xuan was leisurely sipping tea when manager he came to him with a cloth bag in each hand. One of the bags contained a spiritual tree as tall as a person, with most of its trunk exposed. Many dark insect eyes appeared on the smooth tree body, and a faint black gas floated out from it from time to time. You are lucky. 9 of the 1st grade, and 1 of the 2nd grade are this white grained wood. The spiritual plant master who owns it has tried many methods, but none of them worked, so he had to sell it to me. Manager he placed the cloth bag at Xuan's feet, and opened the bag. The roots and stems of the 10 diseased spiritual plants were all wrapped in spiritual soil, to prevent the remaining vitality from being lost. Considering that you need to quickly exchange them for spiritual stones after you cure them, I have selected some spiritual plants that are about to mature. The number is not large. I'm afraid that you will be obsessed and lose your composure because of your good luck in curing a diseased spiritual plant, so I will get 10 plants first to see the effect. Wait until I confirm that you really have the ability to cure diseased spiritual plants, and then I will help you find them. Thank you, Mr. He. Xuan knew that the old man was worried that he would go astray and waste spiritual stones, so he thanked him solemnly. The 10 diseased spiritual plants he bought were extremely cheap, 47 spiritual stones, plus the 13 spiritual stones he needed to pay to manager he as a reward for matchmaking. Xuan spent a total of 60 spiritual stones. After normal spiritual plants are dug out of the spiritual soil, their vitality is lost relatively quickly, not to mention diseased spiritual plants. Xuan did not stop and hurried back to his yard. After greeting the grass puppet in the cloud stepping links, he did not even have time to go into the house and went directly to his spiritual field. Out of caution, he controlled the mist hiding maze, and thick fog filled the air, isolating a blank area of the spiritual field from other spiritual plants to prevent them from being invaded and contaminated. Then, he planted 10 diseased spiritual plants in the spiritual field. His mind was focused on the spiritual plants, and he soon learned their detailed conditions and solutions. It can't be cured. There's no hope. Wait for death. He pulled out a spiritual plant with gray and black tumors all over its roots and stems. The red thread needle turned into a red thread, piercing all the small tumors, and drops of yellow and black pus flowed out of the wound. Smelling fishy, Xuan casually cast a fireball spell and burned all the spiritual plants to black ash. It needs another 100-year spiritual milk. There's no hope. A first grade spiritual plant actually needs the spiritual power of a foundation building cultivator? What the hell is this? A vague and resentful face suddenly appeared on the broad leaves of a blood spirit leaf. Before Lu Xuan could react, the resentful face disappeared silently, as if it was just Lu Xuan's illusion. Playing tricks. Lu Xuan took out the thunder fire bead from the storage bag. Suddenly, the power of thunder and fire in the bead poured out. The flames were blazing, the lightning jumped, and the blood spirit leaf was smashed into powder. Then, he took out a demon to exorcise evil spirits, and with the help of the cloud-stepping lynx who was watching closely, he was sure that there was no trace of evil spirits in the spiritual field. Among the 10 diseased spiritual plants, 4 were directly destroyed by Lu Xuan. They were either terminally ill and incurable, or the conditions for cure were too high. The loss was greater than the gain, so Lu Xuan abandoned them. As for the remaining 6, they were mainly invaded by alienated demon insects. After these demon insects were polluted and alienated by evil spirits, both their own forms and the way they invaded the spiritual plants were very different from before. If ordinary spiritual plant masters had no experience and could not identify them, it would be difficult to solve the problem from the root. In addition, there were also spiritual plants that became diseased because they absorbed a large amount of polluted spiritual energy. The difficulty of these two solutions is relatively low. Lu Xuan cuts off their diseased parts according to their immediate status, eliminates the alienated demon insects that invaded the spiritual plants, and then uses the spiritual rain technique and wood growth technique to promote the rapid recovery of the spiritual plants. After a few days, the alienation factors in the 6 spiritual plants were all resolved, but the spiritual plants themselves were seriously damaged, and it was difficult to recover to a normal level. The second grade white-grained wood will take some time to mature. Lu Xuan looked at the 6 spiritual plants that have returned to normal with a satisfied look. Then, he inspected the spiritual field. The 120 spiritual fireflies planted have grown to about 2 inches, with slender and tender green leaves, and subtle fluorescence flickering slightly, which is very pleasing. The second grade swordgrass and dark marrow ganoderma are getting closer and closer to maturity. In order to achieve the best reward for the white light ball, Lu Xuan is not in a hurry to pick them. In the spiritual field area, where the first grade blood jade ginseng is located, Lu Xuan found that as the time to maturity is getting closer, the blood jade ginseng becomes more excited and active, and the instinct to grab the spiritual energy of the same kind around it becomes stronger and stronger. If you are not careful, 2 or 3 or more blood jade ginseng roots will be entangled together, trying to absorb the spiritual energy in each other's body. Lu Xuan had to pay more attention to them. After using the earth drawing technique to separate them, he took 5 diseased spiritual plants that were 80% to 90% mature to bake tang. As for the second grade white grained wood, it will take some time before it matures, so Lu Xuan plans to cultivate it in the spiritual field first. Lu kid, come here quickly. In Tang, manager he saw Lu Xuan from a distance and called out loudly, "How is it? How many of the 10 diseased spiritual plants have been cured? Did you make a loss? Don't worry about me doing things. How could I make a loss?" Lu Xuan smiled and took out the 5 slightly ugly spiritual plants from the storage bag. "That's right, you kid only know how to take advantage of others. Have you ever made a loss yourself?" Manager he thought of Lu Xuan's previous style and laughed dumbly. The 5 spiritual plants on the counter made him feel much more at ease. With a success rate of more than half, your level has surpassed most of the spiritual plant masters in the hall. No, it should be said that at least in this aspect, you have surpassed all spiritual plant masters. After all, among the diseased spiritual plants they cured, many were of relatively mild severity. The 10 plants you bought last time were already in your hands after they tried them. The thin old man sighed. You are born to be a spiritual plant master, as you can cultivate the perfect quality of Lingian grass and cure the diseased spiritual plants. Although the 5 spiritual plants have recovered to normal, due to the damage they had suffered before, and Lu Xuan's cultivation time was too short, their quality is inferior and ordinary. Manager he estimated the price for each spiritual plant. In the end, 5 first grade spiritual plants brought Lu Xuan 120 spiritual stones. The cost of getting these 10 diseased spiritual plants was 60. Excluding the time, spiritual power, and exorcism talismans consumed in the past few days, Xuan made a lot of spiritual stones. Not to mention, there is also a second grade white grained wood in the spiritual field. When it matures, it can be exchanged for a lot of spiritual stones. Xuan weighed the spirit stone in his hand and put it back into the storage bag with satisfaction. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69. Take a gamble? However, Xuan knew that, by purchasing diseased spiritual plants and selling them after curing them, he could only make a quick buck, and it was not a long-term solution. After all, there were only a few spiritual plants that were invaded and contaminated by evil spirits. Once the spiritual plant masters were alert and paid attention to protection, the number of diseased spiritual plants that they could purchase would gradually decrease. When it came to their own fundamental interests, the big families and big forces in the market would not let the evil spirits endanger the safety of the monks and infringe on the interests of the spiritual fields. Xuan speculated that they would soon react and try to solve the evil spirits that had caused waves in the market. So for him, planting and cultivating spiritual plants with peace of mind and obtaining the opportunity of the light ball were the most fundamental things. As for whether his behavior would attract the attention or even covetousness of other monks, Xuan didn't care too much. This ability itself was within the scope of spiritual plant masters, not to mention that it was nothing compared to being able to grow spiritual plants of perfect quality. After waiting in the hall for half an hour, Manager He, who went to the medicine garden to help Xuan purchase diseased spiritual plants, returned to Baekeo Tang with a bulging cloth bag in his hand. However, this time, there were 2 cultivators following behind, both of whom were at the 5th level of key training. This must be fellow Daoist Lu. I have heard of your name for a long time. I only caught a glimpse of you from afar before, but this time I finally got to know you. At such a young age, you can cultivate spiritual plants of perfect quality. Fellow Daoist Lu is indeed a rare talent. When the 2 saw Xuan, their eyes lit up, and they rushed to Xuan into steps, greeting him warmly. It's the same for you, fellow Daoists, Xuan said casually, looking at the thin old man behind them. Manager He had a hint of apology in his eyes, and pulled Xuan out of the hands of the 2 enthusiastic cultivators, and walked to the corner. I have been buying diseased spiritual plants at low prices in the medicine garden, which has attracted some attention. Some spiritual plant masters kept asking, and I couldn't hide it. Since you don't seem to be shy about it, I told you the truth. Will it affect you, Kid Lu? That's not the case. Old He, you are worrying too much. I didn't intend to hide this matter, Xuan said with a gentle smile. Whether it is to use the connections of Manager He to purchase diseased spiritual plants, or to sell cured spiritual plants, it is impossible to be absolutely secretive, so Xuan did not intend to hide it. He comforted the apologetic old man, and came to the 2 spiritual plant masters. 2 Taoist friends, just tell me what you want to say. The 2 looked at each other, and one of the slightly fat middle-aged monks stood up and said, we learned from Manager He that Taoist friend Lu is good at curing diseased spiritual plants. It just so happens that there are spiritual plants infected in our medicine garden, so we would like to invite Taoist friend Lu to our 2 spiritual fields to help restore the spiritual plants to normal. As long as Taoist friends go with us, we will definitely give you a satisfactory reward. The spiritual plant master next to him added. Xuan pondered for a moment. I do have some experience in treating diseased spiritual plants, but it's not appropriate for me to go to your spiritual fields. First of all, treatment is a long process. It's not possible to cure the disease in one visit. I can't stay in your spiritual fields for a long time, right? Secondly, during the treatment, some unique methods I have learned will be involved. In order to prevent leakage, it is not convenient to go to other spiritual plant masters' spiritual fields. Please understand. Xuan politely refused. Just kidding. If he really went to the spiritual fields of these two cultivators, without the grasp of the real-time status of the spiritual plants, wouldn't he be blind? Hearing Lu Xuan's words, the two of them hesitated. To be honest with fellow Daoist Lu, the spiritual plant that needs your treatment is a second-grade spiritual plant. Both of you and I are spiritual plant masters, so we naturally know the value of second-grade spiritual plants. We spent a lot of spirit stones to obtain second-grade spiritual seeds, and we also poured countless efforts into the cultivation process. If we sell them at the price you offered, it would be too wasteful. That's why I want to entrust you to restore it to normal. I have a way. It depends on whether you can accept it. You to entrust the second-grade spiritual plant to me, and I will transplant it to my own spiritual field for treatment, and then bring it to you two Daoists after it is cured. However, in this case, the price will be a bit more expensive than purchasing it directly. If the treatment is successful, I will charge half of the value of the spiritual plant after it matures in spirit stones. If it fails, it will be reduced to 20%, which is my hard work fee. I will do my best during the treatment, but I cannot guarantee the success rate. Lu Xuan made a suggestion. Half of its value? Fellow Daoist Lu, isn't that a bit too much? We buy spiritual seeds and cultivate spiritual plants, which takes countless efforts and energy. You just spend a little time and can't guarantee success, but you want to take half of it? A trace of anger appeared on the face of the slightly fat middle-aged cultivator. Lu Xuan didn't care and looked indifferent. So, it depends on your own choice, fellow Daoist. Do you choose to sell it at 10% of the price and get the spiritual stones steadily, or choose to exchange half of the spiritual stones for the possibility of getting a normal spiritual plant? Do you want to take a gamble? Can a casual spiritual plant master really cure a diseased spiritual plant? In the backyard of Baikao Hall, in an elegant room, the bearded cultivator Xuan looked at a respectful young man next to him. The young man was handsome and had the 7th level of key training. At this moment, he was standing beside Xuan with a stiff waist. Uncle Master, I went to the medicine garden to ask several spiritual plant masters and went to the spiritual medicine store to check the spiritual plants that Leo he collected. It is true. He bowed his head and replied. Interesting. A smile appeared on Xuan's lips. Uncle Master, that casual cultivator should have mastered some secret technique. Do you want to? The young man raised his head, his eyes were fierce, and his palm was like a knife, cutting the air fiercely. What's in your mind? You only know how to fight and kill. Do you understand the overall situation? How many spiritual stones can a secret technique that can increase the cure rate of diseased spiritual plants bring to Baikao Tang? Where can you get so many contaminated spiritual plants for your treatment? The key to the problem now is how to solve the evil spirits that have invaded the market, and how to prevent the medicine garden from being invaded by evil spirits, rather than being entangled in the petty profits brought by curing several diseased spiritual plants. The long-bearded monk scolded. Yes, Junior has learned from it, the handsome young monk said in a deep voice. As far as I know, the independent cultivator named Lu Xuan is able to grow spiritual plants of perfect quality at a young age. He has a bright future. Such a talented spiritual plant master is obviously important to alchemists like us. I value him as a person more than some so-called means. As long as he can bring endless benefits to Baikao Tang, it's fine. Find an opportunity to get in touch with him more and see if he can be absorbed into the hall. This is the only result I want. Chapter 70 Watching you having sex after drinking. The two Baikao Tang spiritual plant masters finally did not choose to gamble, and each sold the diseased second-grade spiritual plants in their hands to Lu Xuan at a low price. Lu Xuan received 14 diseased spiritual plants this time, 12 of which were first grade and 2 were second grade. For the 14 spiritual plants, he spent a total of 56 spiritual stones, plus the 20 spiritual stones paid to manager he as a reward, a total of 76 spiritual stones. His net worth fell below 300 spiritual stones again. However, Lu Xuan had enough confidence to earn more. He returned to the yard with the diseased spiritual plants. First, control the formation and use the spreading mist to isolate the diseased spiritual plants, and then plant them one by one. Lu Xuan burned those that were about to die or whose recovery conditions were too high and would cause him to lose money on the spot. In the end, there were still 8 spiritual plants worth saving, 7 of which were first grade, 1 was second grade, and the other second grade plant had a certain chance of success, but it would cost a lot of spiritual stones and energy. Lu Xuan weighed the pros and cons and gave it up directly. After working for most of the day, the alienation roots of the 8 spiritual plants were finally cleaned up. Next, it only takes a little effort to cultivate them to maturity. Since the spiritual plants themselves were severely damaged, even if they were carefully cultivated, their quality could not be improved in a short period of time. Lu Xuan let them grow in the spiritual field, and every once in a while, he would use a large-scale spiritual rain spell to rain and dew on them. 5 days passed in a blink of an eye. Lu Xuan did not go out in the past few days and stayed in the yard at ease, cultivating spiritual plants and raising spiritual beasts. The 3-tailed red-bearded carp became fatter and fatter with the continuous feeding of spiritual rice every day. The 2 thin red whiskers under the gills dragged far behind them, swaying forward in the water. In the center of the spiritual spring pool, a small flower bud appeared unconsciously among the white lotus leaves of the first grade pure snow lotus. Under the nourishment of the spiritual spring, the white flower bud exuded a sense of holiness. There was still a small half of the bottle of green water python blood brought by the snake catcher Yuji. With the abundant python blood, the Jiao vine no longer dried up, like it had just been planted in the spiritual field. It was full every day, and the vine was black and shiny. Lu Xuan also carefully noticed that the vine was about half an inch longer than before. It's not easy to cultivate a 3rd grade spiritual plant. A large bottle of 2nd grade green water python blood can only promote its growth by such a small section. He sighed secretly. The 3rd grade Xuan Luo fruit was easier to satisfy, but it was always hiding in the smoke that overflowed from itself, and its true body was hard to find. Among the several spiritual plants that were about to mature, the 1st grade blood jade ginseng became more and more violent. When Lu Xuan was stunned for a moment, they approached each other, looking crazy and either sucking you dry or being sucked dry by you. Lu Xuan had to come to their area every half an hour to take a circle, and even gathered like this at night. There was no other way. In order to ensure the quality of the blood jade ginseng when it matured, he had to cruelly let the 20 blood jade ginsengs be honest and be virgin ginseng for life. The 2nd grade sword grass and dark marrow ganoderma were much less troublesome. The closer the sword grass was to maturity, the more the sword intent on its straight body was restrained. Only the dense and fine sword marks in the spiritual soil showed its previous sharpness. The dark marrow ganoderma had a completely different growth state. The wooden shed that Lu Xuan built for it was completely occupied by the dark red hyphae it dispersed, like countless fine blood vessels, forming an airtight and dense net. Lu Xuan was not impatient, maintaining his own rhythm, doing his best to improve the quality of the spiritual plants, and then quietly waiting for them to mature. In his spare time, he would go to the house of Wu Wenjing next door who loved drinking, and have a drink with him. The surrounding courtyards, Wang Shan's courtyard has been empty since he was wiped out by the monks of the law enforcement hall. In other places, Lu Xuan, who rarely went out, rarely met them. He only knew that the neighboring monks were either practicing hard or going out to look for opportunities. There were only 2 of them. One had no desires and was content with retirement, and the other had a light ball reward and was addicted to planting. After going back and forth, they met more and more, and they became friends. At Wu Wenjing's house. This world is getting harder and harder. You can't even stay in the market to enjoy your old age. The old man put down the white jade wine glass in his hand and sighed. I have no hope of improving my cultivation, so I bought a house in Linyang Market. I brew spirit wine several times a day to make a living, but I didn't expect that even this small request would be difficult to meet. I don't know what those rubbish in the law enforcement hall are doing with so many spirit stones. The evil spirits have sneaked into the market and have not been dealt with for so long. Yes, once there is any abnormal movement, the most hurt are the casual cultivators like us, just like those weeds, who can't stand the slightest disturbance. Lu Xuan felt the same way. If it weren't for the white light ball in the spirit field that changed his fate, he would probably have been silently annihilated in this world. I heard that the spiritual energy and spirit insects in the market were polluted, causing many spirit plants to mutate. Fellow Daoist Lu, are the spirit plants in your spirit field okay? The old man surnamed Wu asked with concern. Fortunately, I found one a while ago, and I pulled it out, and destroyed it in time, so it didn't affect other spirit plants. Lu Xuan said nonsense casually. I heard that the Wang family has asked for help from the family members who are practicing in the sect. Someone will come to the market to search for the evil spirits hidden in the corners. Really? If the sect monks are dispatched, those evil spirits will indeed have nowhere to hide. Lu Xuan nodded in agreement. The old man in front of him has been in the market for decades. He has a wide network of contacts and various sources of gossip. The most difficult thing about the evil spirits hidden in the market is not to solve them. After all, there are foundation building monks in the market, and it should not be a problem to deal with an evil spirit together. It's just that the whereabouts of the evil spirits are mysterious and unpredictable, and it is difficult to detect, which is why it has been delayed until now. The sect monks are full of talents, and they have special techniques, treasures, spirit beasts, etc. to discover and detect evil spirits. It can be said that they are specialized in their professions. It seems that there are not many opportunities to purchase diseased spiritual plants. I will find an opportunity to make another one in the next 2 days. Lu Xuan thought secretly. He had expected this. After all, the big families and big forces in the market would not allow the evil spirits to expand their scope of invasion further, and the problem of spiritual plant diseases would be solved. It would be great if he could earn a large amount of spiritual stones. He sat in the house of the monk surnamed Wu for a while and said goodbye. The spiritual wine brewed by the old man did not taste good at first, but the after effect was quite strong. Lu Xuan looked a little tipsy and came to the spiritual field in the backyard with a bit of drunkenness. Others have sex after drinking, but I watch you have sex after drinking. Hey, separate them all. Lu Xuan used the earth-inducing technique to control the blood jade ginseng with entangled roots and stems to separate. Suddenly, he saw that the maturity progress bar under a blood jade ginseng had been pulled to the maximum, and his mind was instantly much clearer. He took a deep breath and carefully dug the mature blood jade ginseng out of the spiritual soil. Chapter 71 Blood Soul Pill, Burning Blood Arrow. A white ball of light immediately appeared at the location of the blood jade ginseng, flickering slightly, as if reminding Lu Xuan to pick it up. Lu Xuan's mind moved, and the white ball of light turned into countless light points, and poured into his body. A thought emerged in his mind. Harvest a blood jade ginseng, and get a second grade elixir, blood soul pill. A bright red pill appeared in Lu Xuan's palm. The pill was the size of the tip of a thumb, and there were strands of red lines on the surface. One could feel the rich blood inside. Blood soul pill, a second grade elixir. After taking it, it can quickly restore the cultivator's blood and ki, and can also increase the speed of the cultivator's blood and ki training method. The first grade blood jade ginseng, the light ball reward is a second grade elixir, not bad. The blood jade ginseng he dug out had roots of different lengths, like blood red jade, and was of good quality. Lu Xuan continued to check the remaining 19 plants, and soon found 2 more blood jade ginsengs with full progress bars. Harvest 1 blood jade ginseng, and obtain a second grade elixir, blood soul pill. The second blood jade ginseng was also of good quality, and also obtained a second grade blood soul pill. Harvest 1 blood jade ginseng, and obtain the second grade secret technique, burning blood arrow. Or thought flashed through Lu Xuan's mind, and then a mysterious technique appeared in his sea of consciousness. The way to perform the technique, precautions, and cultivation methods. All kinds of detailed information poured into his mind. Burning blood arrow, a second grade secret technique, uses the cultivator's own blood essence to nourish a blood arrow in the body and shoots it from the mouth. It is extremely fast and has strong lethality. The more blood essence burned, the more powerful the blood arrow is. Don't use it frequently. Second grade secret technique. It is rare, but it seems to be the type of killing 1000 enemies and injuring 800 of yourself. Try not to use it unless it is absolutely necessary. Lu Xuan thought. This burning blood arrow secret technique is extremely powerful, and the attack method is also hard to defend against, but the sequelae are relatively large, and it requires burning the blood essence in the cultivator's body. However, this second grade blood soul pill is very compatible with this secret technique. He planned not to actively practice this secret technique. After all, practicing it requires consuming his own blood essence. It is better to open the blood burning arrow experience pack from the white light ball to automatically improve the proficiency of the secret technique. As for the blood soul pill, he will collect it for the time being in case of emergency. Although the remaining 17 blood jade ginsengs are 80% to 90% mature and can be picked directly, Lu Xuan is very patient to leave them in the spiritual soil. Only by maximizing the quality of spiritual plants can you get better rewards. The perfect quality red cloud pine nuts that opened the 3rd grade immaculate jade are the best proof. The good quality blood jade ginseng opened 2 blood soul pills, and the top quality opened the blood burning arrow secret technique, which once again verified his conjecture. After 3 days, the 7 first grade spiritual plants that manager he helped to purchase were almost mature. Lu Xuan picked them directly and planned to make a final effort to see if he could get some diseased spiritual plants. The remaining 2nd grade spiritual plant grew together with the first 2nd grade white grained wood, and it would take some time for it to mature. Just as he packed up and prepared to go out, his left shoulder suddenly sank slightly. He turned his head and saw the cloud stepping lynx lying on his shoulder, with 4 white cloud-like paws firmly hooked on his clothes. Come down, I'm going to go out for a while. You take good care of the house and bring you some delicious food, Lu Xuan said. The cloud-stepping lynx did not move, and its pair of green pupils looked coldly ahead. Lu Xuan knew that the lynx cub was relying on him, so he had no choice but to let it lie on his shoulder. Fortunately, there was a 2nd grade mist hidden maze to protect him, so he was not very worried. He told the grass puppet in the spiritual field and took the cloud-stepping lynx out. In the market for scattered cultivators, Lu Xuan had not been there for a while, and he felt that the market was getting more lively, and the faces of the cultivators who came and went were not as insecure as before. Lu Xuan was walking slowly with the cloud-stepping lynx. Suddenly, a red-yellow figure rushed towards him quickly. His expression remained unchanged, and the red needle in his sleeve trembled slightly, ready to go. The red-yellow figure stopped before it touched Lu Xuan. Only then did Lu Xuan see the specific appearance of the figure. A strange-looking 4-eyed monkey. It had red-yellow hair all over its body, extremely long arms, ridge-like protrusions on both sides of its bright red nose, extending all the way to its nostrils, and 4 eyes, 2 red and 2 white pupils, forming a special pattern that looked like a ghost with a strange nose. At this moment, this strange 4-eyed monkey was circling around Lu Xuan, and its pupils kept turning. Lu Xuan seemed to see a look of desire in it. After the appearance of this strange monster, the monks around him were calm, so Lu Xuan resisted the idea of attacking the strange monkey. Only the cloud-stepping lynx on his shoulder was howling, with its back arched, making a posture ready to attack at any time. Zioc, stop. A beautiful female voice sounded, and before the voice fell, a girl in red came quickly, like a moving flame. My fellow Taoist, I'm very sorry that my spirit beast disturbed you. The girl stopped, looked at Lu Xuan with a bright face, and said with a bit of apology, it's okay. Lu Xuan responded lightly, and the spiritual energy in his body was quietly circulating. He probably sensed that the red-clothed girl in front of him had deep spiritual power, and was likely to be a high-level key training. This 4-eyed red goblin is a spirit beast that grew up with me. It is good at discovering and tracking evil spirits. Just now, it seemed to have sensed that the Taoist had the aura he liked, so it took the initiative to come over. The red-clothed girl explained to Lu Xuan, paused, and asked Lu Xuan with a bit of inquiry. Has the Taoist recently come into contact with any spirit fruit that monsters like? Hearing that the 4-eyed monkey in front of him was good at discovering and tracking evil spirits, Lu Xuan immediately thought of what the neighbor monk said a few days ago, and guessed that the girl was most likely referring to the sect monk invited by the Xuan family. He had a thought, and pretended to be thinking. Spiritual fruits that monsters like. I don't remember any. It's just that I'm a spiritual plant master in Beikao Hall in Fangxi. I often deal with various spiritual plants in the hall. It's possible that I've come into contact with some spiritual fruits during this period. The trace of red cloud pine nuts flashed through Lu Xuan's mind. If there was anything in his body that the monsters were interested in, it would most likely be the 5 red cloud pine nuts in the storage bag. Although he thought about it, he didn't intend to tell the red-clothed girl the truth. He made up a random excuse to get by, and by the way, he pulled the Bakeo Hall to raise the banner and strengthen his momentum. I see. The red-clothed girl didn't doubt it, and walked over to hold the arm of the 4-eyed red demon beast. When she was about to leave, she noticed the cloud stepping lynx on Lu Xuan's shoulder. Daoyao, your cloud walking lynx has 2 magical pupils. If it is properly cultivated, it may develop some strange abilities. Really? Thank you for your reminder. I will take good care of it. Lu Xuan was surprised and grateful. He had already understood the magical properties of the cloud walking lynx through the real-time status, but he still had to pretend to be nice. After watching the red-dressed girl and the 4-eyed red goblin leave, the red needle in his sleeves gathered its spiritual power and returned to calm. Chapter 72, Drawing Cakes. It was not until the red-dressed girl and the 4-eyed red goblin disappeared completely from his sight that Lu Xuan was completely relieved. The sect disciples are indeed extraordinary. Whether it is the girl's own cultivation or the strange pet she raises, they all show a temperament that is completely different from that of casual cultivators. Lu Xuan secretly sighed. The red-dressed girl was about the same age as him, but she was already a high-level key training cultivator. She could find the 4-eyed red goblin that was tracking the evil spirits and clearly see its extraordinariness. There are always people who are better than you, and there are always better than you. The appearance of the red-dressed girl calmed down Lu Xuan, who was a little impetuous due to his continuous improvement in cultivation. As for the 4-eyed red goblin, it might be attracted by the red cloud pine nuts in his storage bag. Lu Xuan just guessed, and had no intention of offering the fruit. He brought the stepping cloud lynx to Bakeo Tang. In the hall with a strong medicinal fragrance, more than a dozen medicine boys were busy, and Manager he leaned on a mahogany chair with a calm demeanor. Lu, have you treated the diseased spiritual plants you brought back last time? How many have you cured this time? The thin old man asked lazily when he saw Lu Xuan. 7 first-grade spiritual plants have been cured, 1 second-grade spiritual plant has died, and another is being treated. Lu Xuan took out the 7 first-grade spiritual plants from the storage bag. The quality was inferior or ordinary. Manager he made an estimate and finally rounded up the price to buy the 7 spiritual plants for 150 spiritual stones. Thank you, Mr. He. Lu Xuan took the 150 spiritual stones from the old man with a smile on his face. One day I will bring you some spirit beast meat and a pot of good spirit wine to comfort you. PFFT. Manager he spat softly and scolded with a smile. You kid, you don't want to see the rabbit, but you still bring me spirit wine and spirit beast meat. You just bring me some empty things. Haha, you really understand me. Lu Xuan's face has been tempered for a long time, so he will not be easily pierced. He smiled and gave Manager he a thumbs up. The old man was just talking. The two of them had a deep friendship. This time, Lu Xuan earned a lot of spirit stones from the purchase of diseased spirit plants. The person who was in charge of the matchmaking also earned 60 or 70 spirit stones, which was equivalent to his usual 2 months' income. He took out a cloth bag from the bottom, which contained nearly 20 diseased spirit plants. Each root was wrapped with a small ball of spirit soil, and there were still drops of spirit rain on the leaves, trying his best to maintain the vitality of the spirit plants. I heard that the Wang family, the main force in the market, invited disciples from the sect to come and solve the evil spirit invasion. It is estimated that it will be difficult for spiritual plants to be diseased in the future. Therefore, I took the initiative to find 23 plants for you in several medicine gardens of Bakeo Tang. 20 first-grade diseased spiritual plants, and 3 second-grade plants. Thank you, Mr. He. You are experienced and helped me a lot in advance. Lu Xuan hurriedly thanked him and asked Manager He how much spiritual stones he spent on purchasing spiritual plants. Together with the remuneration paid to the old man, he spent a total of more than 120 spiritual stones. After hearing that the disciples from the sect appeared, he also had the idea of getting the last sum. After all, there will not be a steady stream of diseased spiritual plants in the market like this time, and 1 or 2 plants occasionally will not bring much profit. He collected the 23 diseased spiritual plants, and was about to leave Baekyeotang, when the thin old man called him. Do you still remember Missy whom I took you to see before? She is the granddaughter of the master of alchemy in Baekyeotang. Lu Xuan nodded. When he first established a cooperative relationship with Baekyeotang manager, he took him to see a beautiful girl. The girl was of noble status and managed the daily affairs of Baekyeotang. At that time, manager, he also applied for 100 spirit firefly grass seeds and 20 blood jade ginseng spirit seeds for him. She came to the hall today and talked about you for a few words. She seemed to be impressed by you. Why don't you go and meet her and get to know her? Maybe she will sell you some rare spirit seeds in the future. Hearing that the girl had the decision-making power of rare spirit seeds, Lu Xuan, who originally wanted to refuse, brightened his eyes and went to the girl's location under the guidance of the old man. As the two walked and talked, Lu Xuan learned that the girl's name was Yuntang. Her cultivation was about to break through to the higher level of key training. She managed Baekyeotang very well. The master of alchemy behind her loved and valued her very much. The two came to a clean and elegant room. The old man greeted the beautiful girl sitting in the middle and left early, leaving Lu Xuan alone. Yuntang looked at Lu Xuan standing aside with curiosity. Because Lu Xuan was the same age as her, she had some impression of Lu Xuan. She remembered that when manager he took Lu Xuan to seek the qualification of spiritual seeds, Lu Xuan was just a small casual cultivator of the second level of key training. If it weren't for his talent in cultivating spiritual plants, the two would not have any intersection at all. Now, Lu Xuan's cultivation has broken through to the 4th level of key training and become a mid-level cultivator of key training. In cultivating spiritual plants, his talent is becoming more and more terrifying. Not only can he continuously grow spiritual plants of perfect quality, but he can also cure the diseased spiritual plants that most spiritual plant masters are helpless to treat. She even heard this name more than once in the family council. Lu Xuan, right? She looked at the natural and unyielding boy in front of her with a hint of appreciation in her eyes. That's right. Lu Xuan replied with a smile. You have such a good talent for growing spiritual plants. Don't you really consider joining Baekyeotang? As long as you enter Baekyeotang, you will get the management rights of Medicine Garden in the hall, and several spiritual plant masters in it will obey you completely. At the same time, whether it is spiritual stones, magic tools, exercises or even Taoist companions, as long as you want, the hall can satisfy you. What do you think? The girl's voice was crisp, but her tone was extremely bewitching. Lu Xuan lowered his head slightly, as if thinking. After a while, he raised his head and said in a firm tone, I'm sorry fellow Taoist, I'm used to being lazy and can't stand any constraints. Let's just follow the original cooperation model with your hall. As long as your hall provides me with spiritual seeds or spiritual plant seedlings according to the agreement, the spiritual plants I cultivate will also be sold to Baekyeotang first. Although Yuntang's suggestion was very tempting, Lu Xuan weighed it again and again on the surface, but in fact he did not hesitate at all. The white light ball was his greatest opportunity. It was fine to plant spiritual plants freely and alone. If he was absorbed into Baekyeotang, he would be restricted and controlled everywhere, which would increase many unnecessary risks. Since you insist on doing this, I will not force you. The beautiful girl changed the subject. However, I think we can have a deeper cooperation. As long as you do your best to cultivate spiritual plants for the hall, you will be provided with the opportunity to plant a large number of second-grade spiritual plants, and even third-grade spiritual plants can be given to you to try. Lu Xuan looked up at the beautiful girl Yuntang and saw the familiar face he often saw in his previous life. There were 2 big words written on her face. Empty promises. Chapter 73 The Wind Rises. As long as the hall can provide me with sufficient second and third grade spiritual seeds, I will naturally cultivate spiritual plants with all my heart. Lu Xuan replied very practically. It's just a pie in the sky, and it makes no difference to anyone. As long as he can get the exact rare spiritual seeds, his cultivation attitude is self-evident. The two talked for a while, and Lu Xuan found a reason to leave. Before leaving, he said goodbye to manager He and came to the casual cultivator market. There were many more cultivators in the market than before. Some of them were in a hurry and looked tired. It was obvious that they had just returned from the wilderness. There were various monster materials on the stalls, and many new varieties of spiritual plants and medicines appeared. While Lu Xuan looked for unknown rare spiritual seeds, he listened attentively to the discussions of the passing cultivators. From the words of the cultivators, he learned that a large number of casual cultivators who went to open up new secret realms had just returned to the market. I don't know if Brother Zhang will come back this time, Lu Xuan muttered to himself, thinking of Zhang Hang's family who had taken good care of him. He originally wanted to go to Wanbao building to buy an alchemy furnace to prepare for alchemy in the future, but after hearing the news, he temporarily changed his route and went to the gathering place of scattered cultivators in the North District. After moving out of the outer area of the North District, Lu Xuan rarely went back there. The only family he was familiar with was Zhang Hang's. When Zhang Hang was out, it was inconvenient for him to go there. Zhang Xuan, on the other hand, came to play with Lu Xuan a few times at the beginning. However, after the invasion of evil spirits and the appearance of alienated cultivators from time to time, his behavior was restricted by his mother Xuan, and he had not seen her for several months. He bought several kilograms of spirit beast meat at the market and carried it to the outside of the Zhang family's yard. There was a knock on the door, and the gate opened a crack, revealing Zhang Xuan's face with a curious look. Uncle Lu, you are here? Dad? Mom? Uncle Lu is here. The moment he saw Lu Xuan, Zhang Xuan, who had once worked together to kill insects and formed a deep friendship, shouted in surprise. Xuan, you have grown so tall. After not seeing each other for a few months, Zhang Xuan suddenly grew a lot taller and was slightly taller than Lu Xuan's shoulders. He walked into the yard with a smile and saw Zhang Hang and the other two people coming out to greet him. Brother Zhang, sister-in-law, long time no see. Lu Xuan was happy to see an old friend and greeted him with a smile. The two did the same. Brother Lu, I finally see you. I heard Xuan say that you moved away when I came back, and I was still talking about it. I didn't expect you to come. Zhang Han grabbed Lu Xuan's arm and pulled him into the house enthusiastically. Brother Zhang, what's wrong with your hand? Lu Xuan noticed the abnormality of Zhang Han's arm. The arm under his sleeve was obviously much smaller. Zhang Han smiled bitterly and rolled up his sleeves, revealing an arm that was dry like an old tree. The flesh and blood on his arm were withered, and even a section of grey bones was exposed. I was unlucky when I opened up the new secret realm this time. I encountered a mysterious evil spirit. I was not careful, and he sucked the flesh and blood of one arm. Fortunately, I saved my life and can see you again. Brother Lu, can you recover? Is there anything I can help with? Lu Xuan asked with a heavy face. After a period of rest, you should be able to recover almost completely, but it will be difficult to fully recover. Zhang Han replied optimistically. Lu Xuan nodded, but unfortunately, his newly acquired blood and soul pills were mainly used to quickly restore Qi and blood, and were not very effective for injuries that required muscle growth. Although I was seriously injured during this trip to the secret realm, it was a blessing in disguise. My cultivation level has broken through to the 4th level of Qi training. I was thinking about showing off to you, Brother Lu, after meeting you. I didn't expect that you have been staying in the market, and your cultivation level has improved faster than mine. You have reached the 4th level of Qi training without realizing it. The two sat at the table, drinking tea and chatting. Xuan took Zhang Xuan to the kitchen to prepare food, and the Cloud Lynx walked slowly in the Zhang family's spiritual field. The quality of the spiritual plants I planted recently is quite good, and I have established a certain cooperative relationship with Bei Ko Tang, so I have earned a lot of spiritual stones. Before, due to the limitation of spiritual power, I couldn't cultivate too many spiritual plants. After thinking hard, I used almost all the spiritual stones to buy elixirs to improve my cultivation, and thus broke through to the 4th level of Qi training in a short period of time. Lu Xuan made up a story, Anyway, whether it was the cultivation reward brought by the white light ball or the improvement of cultivation, after taking a large number of elixirs, they were all pretending to be external objects, so he found a more acceptable excuse. After eating and drinking, Lu Xuan and Zhang Hang sat in the yard, and Zhang Ziyuan was teasing the stepping cloud lynx on the side. The stepping cloud lynx had a cold expression, and his green eyes had no emotion. He ignored Zhang Ziyuan's teasing, but kept a close distance with him. In the yard, the 2 eclipse moon trees that Lu Xuan left for them were planted on both sides, with lush branches and leaves. Silver white fruits like crescents had already grown, looming in the dense leaves. I came back from the new secret realm this time, and I was lucky enough to save my life. I have some different ideas. Zhang Hang opened up. I always thought that, even if there were risks in exploring the secret realm, I would not encounter them. I always dreamed that I could get all kinds of opportunities. But reality always hits you head on. As the exploration of the new secret realm goes deeper and deeper, the dangers that appear are also increasing. I witnessed with my own eyes that a whole team in the distance was killed by evil spirits. More than 10 cultivators, including several mid-level key training cultivators, were easily killed by a strange evil spirit. A trace of fear flashed in Zhang Hang's eyes, and he took a deep breath and recovered. Maybe in the future, I will be like you, Brother Lu, an honest and conscientious spiritual plant master, and live a stable life with my wife and children. It's just right to rest for a while, heal your wounds, and think clearly about the future path, Lu Xuan said. He did not persuade Zhang Hang what to do. Every choice could not be right or wrong. Brother Zhang, why don't you tell me about the situation in the secret realm? Although I don't want to go out and take risks, I still want to listen. Okay, sure. It's always good to know more about evil spirits. The 2 whispered. The wind started in the courtyard at some point, making the branches and leaves of the eclipse moon tree rustle. In the center of the market, Wang's family. On the top of a building several dozen feet high, the head of the Wang family overlooked the entire Lilayang market, without saying a word. Chang'an, what are the 2 sect companions you brought with you doing now? A handsome young man who stood quietly behind him stepped forward and said respectfully. With the help of the 2 brothers and sisters, the evil spirits and alienated monks in the market have been almost cleared, but the strange evil spirit has not been found. I don't know whether it is too good at hiding or has returned to the secret realm. Don't worry about this, just treat them well. Wait until the formation in the center of the secret realm is broken. Find a chance to bring them to the secret realm and use their power to clear the evil spirits in the secret realm. Yes, the handsome young man responded in a deep voice. On the high building, the wind was howling and the dark blue robes were rustling in the wind. Chapter 74, Life Bag. As night fell, and the stars hung low, Lu Xuan was slightly tipsy, walking on the bluestone path under the moonlight. The cloud stepping lynx lay on his shoulder, slightly bent, and kept scanning the surroundings. Its pair of green eyes were very conspicuous in the night. Lu Xuan himself did not completely relax. The red thread needle and the 2nd grade sword energy talisman were hidden in his sleeves. If there was anything wrong, they would be activated instantly. The sect disciples entered the market, not only making the evil spirits disappear without a trace, but also rectifying the market atmosphere. They returned home safely. When they came to the spiritual field in the backyard, Lu Xuan scooped a ladle of spiritual spring water very luxuriously and splashed it on his face. Suddenly, he was sobered up a lot. He came to the area where the diseased spiritual plants were planted before, and took out the 23 diseased spiritual plants that manager he found for him. Once was unfamiliar, twice was familiar. The thick fog spread rapidly, isolating this area from the normal spiritual plants. Lu Xuan planted the 23 diseased spiritual plants, and focused his mind on them. He directly abandoned those that were incurable, or had extremely high recovery conditions, and destroyed them on the spot. After counting, 14 of the 23 diseased spiritual plants could be saved, including 12 first-grade spiritual plants and 2 second-grade spiritual plants. In addition, there were 2 second-grade spiritual plants cultivated in the yard, a total of 4 second-grade spiritual plants. After Lu Xuan's previous 2 acquisitions, he earned about 100 spiritual stones. 12 first grade and 4 second grade spiritual plants in the yard could bring hundreds of spiritual stones, which was a real fortune. After dealing with the diseased spiritual plants, Xuan inspected the spiritual field. All the spiritual plants were in good condition and growing very well. There was no sign of contamination and invasion by turbid spiritual energy or mutated demon insects. This made Xuan miss the mutated spiritual plants before. Once you make enough quick money, it will be difficult to return to the days of earning spiritual stones steadily as before. Xuan laughed at himself and instantly understood what the female cultivators and the brothels in the market did. The spiritual stones earned from curing the diseased spiritual plants can only be regarded as opportunistic, but he almost became addicted to it. As for the female cultivators in the brothel, as long as they lie on the bed, a lot of spiritual stones will go into their pockets. If they practice dual cultivation, they can also increase their cultivation. Xuan took a deep breath and adjusted his mentality. For me now, it is good to see such an opportunity to earn a lot of spiritual stones. There is nothing to regret if I miss it. The right way is to cultivate and plant spiritual plants steadily and get white light balls. In the area where the blood jade ginseng is located, Xuan went out for half a day and they were entangled in twas and threes. Fortunately, it was only in the running in stage and there was no in-depth communication, which would not affect the quality of the blood jade ginseng after it matured. Xuan performed the earth drawing technique and patiently separated them one by one. By the way, he found 4 mature blood jade ginsengs with full progress bars, 2 of good quality, 1 of superior quality, and 1 of perfect quality. After picking, 4 white light balls appeared at the original position, flickering slightly, shining with the starlight. Xuan picked them up one by one. Countless light points poured into Xuan's body, and then, thoughts submerged in his mind. Harvest a blood jade ginseng and obtain a second grade elixir, blood soul pill. Right square bracket asterisk 2 red pills appeared in Xuan's palm one after another, and rich blood energy filled the surroundings of the pills, including the ones I opened before. I now have 4 blood soul pills. I don't know what effect a blood soul pill can have after using the burning blood arrow secret technique. He put the 2 blood soul pills in his hand into the jade box and put it into the storage bag. Harvest a blood jade ginseng and obtain the second grade secret technique burning blood arrow. The white light ball left by the top quality blood jade ginseng opened the burning blood arrow secret technique. Countless information about this secret technique immediately appeared in Xuan's mind. The principle of casting, the means of nourishing blood and ki, the grasp of the timing of casting. It was as if he had practiced hundreds of times in an instant, and his understanding of the secret art of burning blood arrows became more profound and thorough. It's good to have an experience pack. If you really want to practice this secret art, you may have to spray water, no, spray blood hundreds of times, to achieve the effect of spitting blood. During this period, you have to constantly consume your own blood and waste a lot of time, and you have to use blood soul pills or other things to replenish your blood and ki. These can be perfectly solved with an experience pack. Xuan showed a satisfied smile on his face, and he was eager to get a few more secret art experience packs, so that his control of the secret art would advance by leaps and bounds. The last white light ball was left by the perfect quality blood jade ginseng. Before, whether it was the spirit firefly grass or the red cloud pine nuts, the perfect quality spiritual plants all gave out rich rewards, which made Xuan look forward to this last white light ball. He gently picked up the light ball, and the light ball shattered into light spots all over the sky and poured into his body. Harvest a blood jade ginseng and obtain the third grade treasure sheng bag. A cloth bag appeared in his palm. The cloth bag was the size of a palm and was dark blue. The bag body had a mysterious and complex pattern, which was extremely concealed. There was a dark gold string strung at the mouth of the bag, which could shrink and open the bag. A thought flashed through Xuan's mind, and he immediately learned the detailed information about the dark blue cloth bag in his hand. Sheng bag, a third grade auxiliary treasure, can be used to place spiritual beasts and spiritual plants inside, which can maintain the vitality of spiritual beasts or spiritual plants for a long time. The lower the grade of the spiritual plant or spiritual beast, the slower the speed of vitality loss. If the grade is higher than the third grade, it can only reduce the speed of vitality loss to a certain extent. To put it simply, it is a storage bag specifically for spiritual beasts or spiritual plants. Lu Xuan shook the dark blue cloth bag in his hand, and his spiritual consciousness probed into it. The space of the cloth bag is not small, with a radius of half a foot. It is a chaotic place inside, and no one knows what it is made of. It is not easy to put fresh spiritual plants and spiritual beasts in the storage bag. Generally, they are picked or hunted and put directly into the storage bag. The spiritual power in mature spiritual plants or spiritual beast meat can only be preserved for a period of time. Now, the blue-black cloth bag in front of him has solved his previous doubts. With this life bag, the cloud stepping lynx, the grass puppet and many spiritual plants can be put into it without worrying about the loss of vitality. Some time ago, when the evil spirits began to break out in Linyang market, Lu Xuan also considered leaving the market and going elsewhere. But in the end, it ended in vain, and ended in vain. Although there are many factors, such as the support of the Xuan family and other major forces in the market, there is no good new target, and the strength is not enough to go out for adventure. But the main reason is that the spiritual plants in the spiritual field cannot be taken away intact. In the spiritual field, there are several kinds of second grade and third grade spiritual plants, each of which is of extremely high value. What's more, behind each second grade and third grade spiritual plant is a white light ball containing rich rewards. If you leave the market and only use the storage bag, you can't maintain your vitality for a long time. Now with the life bag, this problem is solved. According to the book Friend's suggestions, when harvesting spiritual plants, the reward description is changed from to, will it luck better? Chapter 75, Cooking. Spiritual plants and beasts below the third rank. Lu Xuan muttered to himself, sweeping across the spiritual field. His sight focused on the red-bearded carp resting with its eyes closed in the spiritual spring pool. The red-bearded carp is a spiritual beast of no rank, and Lu Xuan intends to use it for experiments first. The spiritual power entangled one of them, and with a fierce pull, it was pulled out of the spiritual spring pool. Before the red-bearded carp could react, Lu Xuan had already put it into the life bag. The spiritual consciousness probed into the dark blue cloth bag, and the red-bearded carp floated in a chaos, shaking its head and tail, and its two thin red long whiskers fluttered randomly. With a bang, the red-bearded carp flew out of the life bag and hit the surface of the spiritual spring pool, waking up the other two. The three red-bearded carps awakened from their sleep stared at each other stupidly, not knowing what happened. Little guy, come here. Lu Xuan summoned the green-eyed cloud-stepping lynx that was eager to try not far away. The young lynx looked at Lu Xuan coldly, and its thick paws like white clouds stepped silently on the ground, and it walked gracefully. Let me put you in and try. It will come out soon. The stepping cloud lynx nodded gently. Lu Xuan put it into the life bag and took it out after a while. Ah. As soon as it landed, the stepping cloud lynx cried softly. It can be seen that it is not in a good mood at the moment, and its voice is much more delicate than usual. Lu Xuan's mind is focused on it, and he instantly knows the reason. When the lynx stays in the life bag surrounded by dim light, it recalls the experience of being caught and locked in a cage before. Okay, don't worry, I will try my best to keep you outside when I go out, and I won't put you in the bag unless it is absolutely necessary. Lu Xuan comforted him. The lynx cried lightly, and the voice unconsciously became clamped, but because the original voice was too rough and hoarse, it revealed a strong sense of disobedience. One night passed. The next day, as soon as the sky was dawning, Lu Xuan got up and came to the spiritual field where the blood jade ginseng was located. He separated the remaining blood jade ginseng that were huddled together in groups of 3 or 5. He inspected the spiritual field again and satisfied each spiritual plant in various ways according to its slightest needs. Finally, when he came to the spiritual spring pool, Lu Xuan couldn't help but exclaimed. He saw a fist-sized white light bowl floating quietly on the water, reflecting different shades of light in the rippling water. This is, a red-bearded carp has entered the mature stage. Lu Xuan said to himself with a look of surprise on his face. He scanned it with his mind and quickly locked onto the red-bearded carp that had entered the mature stage. Go, catch it from the spiritual spring pool. He pointed to the fattest red-bearded carp and said to the stepping cloud lynx. The lynx jumped up, stepped lightly on the water with its hind feet, and grabbed the thin red long beard of the red-bearded carp. The red-bearded carp was involuntarily brought out of the water. Just when it thought it would fall into the spiritual spring pool as usual, a red needle pierced the fish's head and brought it into the kitchen. Get out of the pot. When it's ripe, it's time to put it in the pot. You've eaten so much of my spiritual rice, it's time to repay me. Xuan rolled up his sleeves and picked up the white light bowl floating in the spiritual spring pool. Harvest red-bearded carp and obtain the 2nd grade magic weapon red scale armor. A thought emerged from his mind, and a red inner armor appeared in his hand. The surface of the inner armor had dense scales like fish scales, which had extremely strong protective power. Xuan put the 2nd grade red scale armor into the storage bag and hurried to the kitchen. The silver breaking blade decomposed into more than 10 silver white fragments. In a few breaths, the scales of the red-bearded carp that had just died were scraped clean. Xuan gathered the two thin red whiskers and many scales together. The red-bearded carp is just a non-grade spiritual beast, so the long whiskers and scales on its body naturally cannot be exchanged for many spiritual stones. However, Xuan has never had the habit of wasting anything, so he put them all into his storage bag. After working for half an hour, a pot of steaming fresh fish was brought to the table. Xuan picked up a piece, and immediately, a fresh and fragrant taste filled his throat. As soon as it entered his stomach, he felt a ray of warm air flowing through his limbs and bones, warming his whole body. It has been with me for so long, and I have some feelings for it. I really can't bear to let it go. Xuan couldn't help but shed sad tears from the corners of his mouth. Thinking of the red-bearded carp, when it was just bought, it was a small one, and he raised it little by little. He couldn't help but feel sad in his heart, and took a large piece of fish meat, which turned into appetite. With delicious food in front of him, the stepping cloud lynx still maintained a reserved and elegant posture, lying quietly at Xuan's feet, but kept making a howling sound, indicating that he should feed more fish meat and bones. Xuan couldn't bear the ambiguous cry of its claws, so he quickly stuffed a large piece of fish meat into its mouth. Senior sister. Wang Chang'an knocked on the door gently and called softly. With a creak, the door opened, and a girl in red stuck her head out. Junior brother Wang, what's the matter? I went to the market and found several spiritual fruits suitable for my spiritual beast. Senior sister, take them and see if the red goblin is interested. The handsome young man Wang Chang'an raised his mouth with a smile, making people feel like being bathed in spring breeze. Thank you, junior brother Wang. The red-clothed girl took the fruit plate handed over by Wang Chang'an and went into the inner room. After a while, she came out again with a helpless look on her face. In the fruit plate, there were several spiritual fruits with tooth marks on the surface, but they were just small gaps. It can be seen that the four-eyed red goblin was not interested and had no appetite for these spiritual fruits. It still doesn't work. The red goblin has been eating the spiritual fruits cultivated by the sect for a long time. It is very picky and has extremely high requirements for the types and quality of spiritual fruits. Although there are varieties of these spiritual fruits that it can eat, the quality is just average. It will not eat them after taking a bite. The red goblin is a strange beast, so it naturally looks down on the wild fruits cultivated by ordinary spiritual plant masters in the market. I will ask for my senior sister and find the spiritual fruits it likes as soon as possible. Wang Chang'an said with a smile. The red-clothed girl in front of him was gifted and had an extraordinary background. The four-eyed red goblin she raised was of great use, whether in tracking evil spirits in the market or in reclaiming the secret realm later. He did his best to meet the various requirements of the man and the beast. When you are too hungry, you will naturally eat everything. The red-clothed girl looked at the four-eyed red goblin in the house and said angrily, "Sister, don't worry about it for now. There are many young talents from all the major forces in the market who have admired the disciples of the sect for a long time. They want to make friends with the brothers and sisters. Why don't you go with me to relax?" "Okay." The red-dressed girl agreed without hesitation. The three of them came to a quiet garden with flying eaves and curved water. There were more than a dozen young men and women waiting in the pavilion, all of them with extraordinary demeanor. He Yuntong, the granddaughter of the alchemist of Baikao Tang, was also among them, standing quietly in the corner with her eyebrows lowered and her eyes pleasing to the eye. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.